It was great. Good win for the Predators. So I want to start on this today. I'm going to just say this right now. If you are somebody that cannot hear the truth, like you don't want to hear the truth about the Titans, you only want to hear good things, if you only want positivity, if you only want me to break down this Monday night's, I think, impending bludgeoning at the hands of the Dolphins, change channel. If you want to hear the truth, stay with us. If not, turn away. Because 1 year ago today, Amy Adams Strunk shocked all of us by firing John Robinson as their general manager. In fact, the way it was told to me was that John Robinson was in his office. Burke Nihill, the team president, walked down the hallway with Amy on the phone, handed the phone to John, and she fired him over the phone. That does not sound like a functional organization. Out of nowhere, the Titans, who are sitting at 7-5 in first place of the division, incredible odds to make the playoffs and host a home playoff game, decided right then and there, after getting embarrassed at Philadelphia with A.J. Brown, the player John Robinson traded away, spanking the goalpost, decided to fire their general manager. I think the reaction was somewhat mixed. I think a lot of people were confused. I think a lot of people were trying to figure out, okay, you can fire John, but the timing of this isn't great. And a lot of you guys called in and a lot of you guys texted in, and I heard a lot of, yeah, it's his fault. Amy decided she had to make a choice, and she made it. That's great leadership. 1 year ago today. Well, let's look back on the last year that the Titans have had. I was depressed when they fired John Robinson. Even more so when the owner didn't speak about it and sent the head coach up to the podium the next day to be peppered with questions about a decision that technically he didn't make. When I found out, and I did a lot of digging, and I did a lot of talking, and I did a lot of that, when I found out that this wasn't an HR issue, this wasn't John Robinson said the wrong thing to the wrong person. When I found out this was performance-based, I got depressed. Because that's what stupid NFL teams do. The teams that we've laughed at for forever, the Jets, the Raiders, the Browns, the Commanders, that's what they do. We've laughed at them. We laughed at the Texans when they fired their general manager after the draft, put Bill O'Brien in charge so he could trade away DeAndre Hopkins. We laughed at Jacksonville when they hired Urban Meyer to be their head coach. We laughed at the Colts earlier in the year when they hired Jeff Saturday off of TV to be the coach. Because that's what bad organizations do. But not the Titans. The Titans, look, they had their issues. Quarterback, who knows? Team was, missing on draft picks. Trade away A.J. Brown. He embarrasses you. I mean, it's not perfect. Coordinator got a DUI. But we weren't the laughingstock of the NFL as far as fandom was concerned. So what's happened in the year since they fired John Robinson? Number one, there was the firing itself with no word from ownership until she flew in and did a sit-down with a hand-picked Teresa Walker as the only comments coming from the owner. Number two, they got caught shopping their star player Derrick Henry and got caught lowballing star safety Kevin Byard. New GM takes over, and first and foremost off the bat, he's trying to shop, or at least gets caught shopping, the most popular player and the best player since the team has moved from Houston. That's not very good. Then there was the Diana Rossini draft night special when you got scooped by the Houston Texans so that your division rival could draft their quarterback who you desperately wanted, who, by the way, is going to be the unanimous rookie of the year. And here's what Diana said the day before the draft. And again, I want you to think about this. Do good organizations just tell people what they're going to do? This was the day before the draft on ESPN.
They are ready to go for Thursday night. So what are they going to do with their pick at 11? Carthon tells me they're open to everything. They're willing to move out. They're willing to stay. they're also willing to move up. In fact, I spoke to some sources around the league, teams like the Arizona Cardinals, who have taken calls from the Tennessee Titans about perhaps trading up. Now, the player they're going for, Carthon wouldn't tell me what they're doing, but my sense is the Tennessee Titans have their eyes on a quarterback, and they're going to do everything they can to go get him.
Why wasn't Diana reporting from Indianapolis about them wanting to draft that quarterback? Why was Diana not reporting from Houston that Houston, I hear, is thinking about making a massive move to trade up for the third pick so they can get both the quarterback and the defensive player? Nope. Only you. Loose lips sink ships. And right there, Diana, the day before the draft, broadcast to the entire country, and you let her. Diana broadcast to the entire country what you were trying to do. And now they have C.J. Stroud, and you don't. How about after the draft? How about the second night of the draft? So the first night was bad enough. You get it scooped thinking you're going to get Stroud, and you don't. How about the second night of the draft when the general manager begged the media to please be positive?
I don't want these interactions between us to always feel like we got to take a negative turn. And, this should be a joyous moment for us to praise these kids. This is a moment these kids are going to see this, and this is a moment for them and their families to rejoice in, because it's only going to happen once. There'll be other times to critique what they've done. These kids haven't even stepped on the NFL field yet. So let's keep that in mind. This is a moment for them and their families to have something to be proud of and enjoy this moment.
If the NFL draft is the best night of their NFL career, they're not going to have a very good career.
I mean, that's embarrassing. Not only is it embarrassing for a rookie general manager to be talking to veteran media people about, hey, be positive, but then for the coach who you're supposed to be in lockstep with to sit there and completely just dunk on what it is that you said, that's not very encouraging. Then after the draft, there was no commitment or direction on where the team was headed with Tannehill and Henry. And again, fans are wondering, are you rebuilding or are you not rebuilding? Most teams know what their team is trying to do. Then they got the starting right tackle suspended for gambling because I guess he's one of 3 people that didn't know the rule. How come they couldn't teach him? Again, another mark. Then Mike Vrabel went to New England for the Patriots Hall of Fame induction, where he raised a lot of eyebrows across the league by saying this.
But I also want you not to take this organization for granted. I've been a lot of places. This is a special place with great leadership, great fans, great direction, great coaching. Enjoy it. It's not like this everywhere. Thank you very much.
I've been a lot of places. No, you've been in Pittsburgh, you've been in Houston, you've been in New England, you've been here. That's not a lot of places. And when you say it's not like this everywhere, what do you think that means? Now, he downplayed it, said, no, I was just talking about the Super Bowl. And yet every report we read, even the one from his hand-picked insider, Diana Rossini, was, boy, I tell you, I got a lot of eyes open and questions asked when Mike Vrabel went there and said that. But the Titans then turned around the next day and traded away the star safety on a horrendous pass defense for a bag of footballs in a 5th and a 6th round pick. But that's not all that happened that week, because that very same week, a report came out after the coach had said that both quarterbacks were going to play. A report had come out that Will Levis was going to be the Titans starting quarterback, and the head coach did not take too kind.
I never said that Will was going to be the starter. Both of them will play if Ryan can't. We'll see how Ryan feels. He may do a little bit of work later in practice today, but that's how we are. That's where we're at right now.
It was very clear to multiple people that the coaches did not want it to get out that Will Levis was starting.
Okay. Then there's all the losing. Since you fired John Robinson, you were 7-5. You had a 90+% chance of making it to the playoffs as the division winner, and you lost every game. In the calendar year since John Robinson has been fired, you are 4-13. That would be good enough last year to pick at number 4, sandwich in between 3-13-1 Houston and 4-12-1 Indianapolis. You stink. When John Robinson was fired, it was because the standard that John Robinson had gotten this team to was not good enough. What's been good since? I'm fine with the idea that John Robinson wasn't drafting well or that John Robinson had made mistakes with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. And we talked about that every day on this program. But John Robinson won 61% of his games as general manager of the Tennessee Titans. Right now, you suck. Right now, you're a dumb organization. You're a bad organization. You're a clown show of an organization. You're the organizations that we make fun of. You're the Raiders. You're the Jets. You're the Browns. You're a joke. And you, Titan fans, need to hear that. Because in the last year, when they fired Robinson the way they did, the message was clear. The narrative was made. John Robinson was the problem. Well, if John Robinson was the only problem that you had, don't you think something positive would have happened over the last year? I've got two potential good things that happened over the last year. One, you got all of us to pay $1.2 billion for a new stadium. And two, you got DeAndre Hopkins. Other than that, it's been the year from hell as a Tennessee Titans fan. It's embarrassing to be a fan of this team. And I'm just going to look into the camera and I'm going to say this directly right now. Because I do like ownership of the Titans because I think they're good people. But they need to hear this. It starts at the top. What happened last year was an embarrassment. What has happened since last year was an embarrassment. And while we're going to pay a lot of money for that stadium, and you're going to make a lot of money on that stadium, one of the key components of them being able to pay for this stadium are PSLs. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not threatening anything because I don't have anything to threaten. There are going to be a lot of people that if you do not straighten up and you do not get this organization headed in the right direction, not just in terms of winning and losing, but in how it comports itself, that will not pay $45,000 for a PSL, that won't pay $65,000 for a premium PSL, that won't pay $20,000 for a PSL. So you guys have that built into the price of, oh, we're going to sell $180 million worth of PSL. Not if this keeps up. Not if it keeps going in this direction. So I want to make one thing very clear. This is not in any way to cop for John Robinson, because I'm not doing that. This is not an exoneration of John Robinson, because I'm not doing that. And I think there would have been very serious questions about John Robinson and whether he should have kept his job at the end of the season. There would be questions, I think, going into this season. But when they decided enough was enough and they fired him out of nowhere, which nobody does, it has been one embarrassment after another. Even today, the head coach, when asked a perfectly fair question that everybody is speculating on and everybody is talking about, walked off the podium because he can't be accountable enough to answer for it. I wonder where he got that idea from. Maybe it was from the owner not wanting to be accountable about the decisions they've made. Maybe it's about the general manager who's not accountable for the decisions he's made. I'm not saying this is the end of the Tennessee Titans. I'm not saying there's no way out. But if the Titans don't change the way they think and the way they operate, we got a lot of lean seasons ahead of us. I told somebody with the Titans the day John Robinson got fired, they said, well, you had just been all over Robinson for some of the mistakes that he had made. And that's true. And there had been plenty. But I said in my lifetime, the Titans have had two good general managers, Floyd Reese and John Robinson. And the 10 years in between was like Moses wandering through the desert. And I said at the time, I feel like Moses heading back out to the desert. Guys, are you enjoying the desert as much as I am? 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. I was going to tell you, I mean, sometimes the truth hurts. And the 1 year since John Robinson got fired, it has been one disastrous Sunday after another. It's been one draft night spectacular debacle after another. So that's how we're starting. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Honestly, I had made the decision. It was time to move forward. There was no reason to go 6, 7, 8 weeks, however long we remain in the season. It was not fair to John. It was not fair to the team. It just seemed the right thing. It gives us plenty of opportunity now to identify future candidates that we're going to interview, to get to know watch the internal candidates. It's I'm just not that person that's going to sit on a decision like that.
That was Amy Adams Strunk after finally she sat down with Teresa Walker 3 days after she fired John Robinson. And I still can't get over that, right? It just wasn't fair to John. It wasn't fair to John to have him keep his job and see if this team that was most likely going to make the playoffs at this point last year, see if they could do something, incredible, pull something off of who knows. It wasn't fair to let them do that? That doesn't make any sense. It wasn't fair to the players. What does that even mean? Somebody explain to me how it is fair or not fair to the players that they keep the GM or fire the GM. This is what I think happened. And this is why I don't like the entire nature of this. See, I believe that, again, I hate being the one that has to do this, where I feel like I have to take the Titans, put them over my knee, and spank them. And I will tell you this. It hurts me more than it hurts you. I'll just tell you that. But this idea that the Titans decided right after the A.J. Brown game of you're fired is so embarrassing, because if it's true, it means you're so incredibly reactive that you make Al Davis look like Mother Teresa, or, which is probably more likely, they figured that was the time to do it because people were mad at John Robinson for trading away A.J. Brown, and they knew they were most likely to win the division. And who knows, you get to a divisional round, an AFC title game, where you got to fire the general manager who just won you 3 divisions in a row? I mean, it's still embarrassing enough that you fired a general manager who has the same winning percentage running the Titans that Bill freaking Walsh had running the 49ers. And in Amy Adams Strunk's statement, when she fired John Robinson, I actually went back and looked at it today. The statement that they put out when they fired John Robinson was basically along the lines of, okay, here you go. Since becoming controlling owner in 2015, my goal has been to raise the standard for what is expected in all facets of our organization. I believe we have made significant progress both on and off the field through investments in leadership, personnel, and new ideas. This progress includes the core of our business, the football team itself, which is regularly evaluated both by results, wins and losses, and team construction/roster building. By the way, they've done a terrible job of since John Robinson left. He wasn't doing a great job. They've done a worse job. I am proud of what we have accomplished in my 8 seasons of ownership, but I believe there is more to be done and higher aspirations to be met. You are 4-13 since then. You suck. Okay? So the one thing, I am not absolving John Robinson of blame. The one thing I want us all to agree on, though, is that he's not the only problem in this. He's not the only person culpable for why this team sucks so bad. For those of you that don't know what the word culpable means, it means responsible. He's not the only one here. When you put that statement out, you didn't think you were going to go 4-13. You thought you were going to get it right. Instead, you end up with a $10 million Andre Dillard at left tackle. So I think that the Titans, I don't know how they get themselves. I mean, I know how they should get themselves out of this. I don't know how they will get themselves out of this. But this idea that, again, right then and there, oh, yeah, Amy, she just, she didn't feel like it was fair to John and the players that he continue on as general manager. So it was important, which, again, I still don't understand either, important just to flip the board game over in the middle of the experiment, of the middle of the season, just flip it over for you to have this laughing stock of a football team. That kook in Indianapolis has beaten you twice. You're 0-6 in the division since you did that. You've lost to Jacksonville 3 times. You've lost to Indy twice, and you lost to the Texans of last year. You stink. So, again, on this day, I feel like, again, what's going to happen is it's always easy to sit there and say, oh, well, John Robinson's fault this, John Robinson's fault that, John Robinson. And look, he blew the 2000 draft, he blew the 21 draft. And if the results had been the same, where they lost all those games in last year, we could have had a discussion about his job. You could have reasonably fired him at the end of last year if they had lost all those games in a row with Dennis Daly and Malik Willis and the way that team was constructed. But they did it when they were in first place. And if John Robinson was so bad, then wouldn't he have been the problem and they would have gotten that fixed by now? So it's making me think that John Robinson wasn't the problem. I see your phones. We're to them next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. And there is one thing that I have never told John Robinson, but I think, quite frankly, is probably the worst thing that he let happen. We'll get to that next here on Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Tune in to 102.5, 106.3 The Game tonight for Vandy men's basketball. The Commodores take on San Francisco at Memorial Gym tonight. Tip-off is at 7. Pre-game is at 6:30, and coverage is also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com.
John, is there any chance that AJ could be traded between now and that?
I think I've spoke on that several times now, so do not foresee that happening.
Jared, I don't foresee us trading A.J. Brown. As Maury Povich would say, the lie detector test determined that was a lie. Now, John Robinson didn't get fired necessarily because of the A.J. Brown trade. There's a lot in there to discuss. And again, I think that the way the A.J. trade blew up, when you're a general manager and you take those kind of risks, you know what the other side of the risk is. But the most disheartening part of the A.J. Brown trade, for me, is how it all went down based off of what I know. Some of this I know that I don't think I've ever reported or whatever, but around the time at the Combine, and that's pre-free agency. So remember that. The 2022 Combine, I was told that A.J. Brown was telling people that he was signing a 4-year contract extension with the Titans. And then it didn't happen. And then free agency happened. AJ's agent is Tory Dandy. Tory Dandy represents a lot of wide receivers like Deebo Samuel, who was also demanding a trade at San Francisco at the time. But what happened was Tory Dandy got deals for guys that already had teams. Mike Williams stayed with the Chargers for a $20 million a year contract. Chris Godwin stayed with Tampa Bay. But then free agency opened up, and Christian Kirk signed with the Jacksonville Jags for $18 million, and everybody did a double take. And now the receiver market was reset. Devontae Adams got traded, Tyreek Hill got traded, and signed massive contracts. And they weren't represented by Tory Dandy. So here's Tory Dandy, who's supposed to be the receiver agent. And I have just picked up clues all along the way. I have never told John Robinson this. And so I would hope he doesn't listen to sports radio in Nashville. But if he does, this is going to be the first time he hears about it. Which is, I think he got totally played by Tory Dandy. AJ did a podcast on Darren Bates' podcast, in which he basically said Mike Vrabel told him to be patient and that his time would come. But then all of a sudden, Tory Dandy, when they weren't getting the deal they wanted, Tory Dandy told him to cut off contact with the organization. Well, why would Tory Dandy do that? AJ went on the record after he got traded and told TD, they were offering me $16 million a year with escalators up to 20. They were lowballing me. Then the Titans sources told TD after TD published the story, and what's TD supposed to do? He got the interview. AJ gives you the interview, you say what AJ said. But TD's Titans sources the next day told him, that's not true. We were offering $20 million a season. So I don't know where AJ got this idea. It was $16 million and that the escalators were taking it up to 20. So then why did Tory Dandy tell AJ to cut off contact with the Titans? Because Tory Dandy was trying to get a big deal. Because Tory Dandy knew that he had missed out on the receiver market with Godwin and with Godwin and Williams. And he had DK, I believe, and he had AJ and Deebo, and he needed a score. And he got under John Robinson's skin. And John Robinson, with all the drama that AJ was willing to threaten to create, decided we can't do things like that because it was a Patriot Way organization. And they traded him because they thought they were getting a younger, cheaper, healthier, who has been far more injured version of A.J. Brown. I do believe that John wanted to re-sign A.J. Brown. When he went to the owners' meetings and Jim Wyatt made a whole story about how they wanted to keep A.J. Brown, I do think he wanted to re-sign A.J. Brown. But once Tory Dandy let it get personal, and he let it get personal on A.J.'s side, and he let it get personal on John's side, he took advantage. See, they tried to do the same thing to the 49ers, and Shanahan and Lynch weren't interested in that. Oh, he threatens to hold out. He wants a trade. He'll never play for San Francisco again. He wants to be paid like a running back and a receiver. And San Francisco never budged. That was the mistake. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. John in Nashville has been waiting patiently, is going to start us off today. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, John.
For sure, man. As always, thanks for taking the call, man. I'm going to hop right into it. Long-time listener. You told a story once how the old man off air told you he saw two people prepared for their craft the way they do at the highest level. That was Thomas Brady and Jared Stillman. And I just got to commend you, man. I've been a native Nashville all my life, saw the Titans come in, playing in Vanderbilt games. The fact that Rand Carthon would not take an interview with the local media here, but took one in Atlanta, was atrocious. And it's not only disrespectful and laughable, but it's insulting the way no one is willing to stand in the fire and be held accountable for what is going on. We have no direction, no voice. All we do is march Mike Vrabel out there like he's Bill Belichick. And I'm not on the fire Vrabel train, don't get me wrong, but we need to hear something else from some leadership. And that's all I got, man. You do an excellent job of bringing that to the light, and that's all I got.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think it's convenient that Rand Carthon's saying, hey, I don't talk right now because it's not talking season. Paul brought this up on the morning show. I thought he was pretty accurate about it. Because I do understand the idea that when they decided to form the commission and they were going to build the team a certain way, I understand that, there are boundaries. And so if it is Mike's job to talk during the season and it is kind of agreed upon that, hey, Mike talks during the season, then I understand why Rand wouldn't get up there right after they traded away Kevin Byard. That being said, Rand Carthon did an interview with TD. And again, just like TD reporting what AJ said, like it's the reporter's job to report. It's not the reporter's job to, interrogate somebody to make sure that they're, completely being honest one way or another. Just like, and again, AJ was honest. I just think AJ had been lied to with what he told TD. But again, that's a different story. But Rand Carthon did an interview with TD that dropped yesterday at ESPN. And Paul brought this up today, in which he talked about how he's not talking. So I'm talking to talk about how I'm not talking. What? That I have a hard time totally understanding. Chuck is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. What's up, Chuck?
Yeah. Hey, yeah. So I just want to have been the last caller, hit it right on the head, right? We need some transparency, some accountability going on. So I am a season ticket member with the Titans, longtime Titans fan, and the frustrations really have to start at the top, right? But if you just look at how the whole organization is being ran from top to bottom, from how they're looks like they're pausing, a lot of their investment into places until
John, I'm going to need you to pause your investment into your phone provider and get a new phone, because I think you were making some points, but I don't really know what you were saying other than that. Look, the ownership's not going to sell the team, and ownership doesn't have to sell the team. Ownership just has to change how they operate the team. That's all I'm asking. Just a little bit of accountability. Like, if you're going to be Jerry Jones, just be Jerry Jones. If you're going to tell the coach to fire the special teams coach, then just be Jerry Jones, right? Like, I mean, I'm glad I'm not a Cowboy fan because I think Jerry gets in the way from them winning, but at least Jerry's got the stones to be like, I bought it. I want it to be my way, so I'm the general manager. You think Jerry knew who Deron Bland was before they? Of course not. But again, Jerry wants everybody to know who's boss. And that's okay. That's his right. He bought the team. He can do it. But again, this idea of like, yeah, we're going to fire our general manager, talk about how we're doing this for excellence, and then be terrible and have every little like embarrassing drama moment leaking at the draft, begging the media to be positive. They fired the equipment manager who'd been here for 40 years. It's like, oh no, Vrabel's got time. They don't have time to find a tackle. They don't have time to figure out, to go out in the market and see if they can get a center. But they've got time to fire the 40-year equipment manager. What? Like, let's get the priorities straight around here. Oh, goodness. It's just wild to me. Zach texts into the text line and says, John Robinson was absolutely the biggest problem. Yeah, I'm sure Don Shula was the problem with the Dolphins. He wasn't the only problem, but he was by far the biggest. He traded A.J. Brown. He drafted horrifically from 2020 to 2022. First of all, when John Robinson left, I used to ask Floyd this all the time about what happened to Vince Young. Why'd you scout Vince Young? You draft Vince Young? What? And he said every time he'd say the same thing. When I was here, he was rookie of the year and going to the Pro Bowl. Now, what happened after I left, I don't know. And what's that mean, Ian? Like, what's the translation to that?
They screwed him up.
They screwed him up. So you talk about the 22 draft class. I mean, is it John Robinson's fault that Chig, who looked like a capable tight end last year, can't catch this year? Is it John Robinson's fault that PT did not get 1 ounce better? Is it so let's be honest here. Last year, ESPN ranked the draft class as the 4th best draft class after the season, or 4th most productive draft class last year. 20 and 21 were terrible. And I did say this on the day after the 21 draft. I said, I got a lot of buddies who worked in crypto, and they're like, oh, dude, this thing, like, this is going to shoot up to $10 trillion one day. And I'm like, cool, man. I'm going to invest in real estate and the stock market, and you do that. And if you get your own island one day, please invite me. But I'm not going to invest in that. And when they drafted Caleb Farley, I'm like, that's what you're doing. That is some cryptocurrency stuff, right? You're begging on that lottery ticket to pop. And so that was bad. I mean, trust me, that was bad. 2020 was bad. Says 3 major issues that haunt this franchise to this day. Yeah, but you can also overcome them. Like, you're not the only team to ever bust on a draft choice. You're not the only team. Many teams bust on draft choices. The Eagles bust on draft choices. The Chiefs bust on draft choices. But somehow, some way, they keep it going, and they seem to be okay for that. The A.J. Brown thing was terrible. That one was bad, and there's no way around that. I mean, I saw Burks was talking to the media today, and I'm just like, I don't even care about Burks anymore. Like, I've just kind of moved on from Burks. Like, yep, at the end of the year, hopefully they'll be able to trade him for something. Maybe they'll get the same bag of footballs they got for Byard. I don't know. But as far as, like, seriously considering Burks as an option going forward with this team, I'm not there anymore. I mean, that was just – and when you take that kind of risk, it can cost you your job. The problem I have is the way with which they did it, the way with which they elevated Mike Vrabel, the way with which they made him the problem and nobody else, and yet they can't win a game. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Chris Sanders will join us, as he always does, right here, Stillman & Company, on a Wednesday. Hey, Preds fans, tonight, be sure to enjoy Smashville Live at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue, 6 o'clock, as you can see Colton Sissons and Cody Glass up close and personal. Smashville Live is brought to you by the Black Abbey Brewing Company. Somebody's texted into the text line and says, Jared, I have a recording of you saying that you liked the firing of John Robinson. To which I replied, no, you don't. And they said, no, you want to hear it? I mean, Ian, you've been behind this, the board for 300 shows since they fired, 360 shows since they fired John Robinson? Have I ever said that what they did that day was a good thing?
I don't think so.
I mean, honestly, I know I say a lot of stuff, but I have been pretty vehement that I wouldn't have fired John Robinson. At the end of the year, if they had lost all those games, then we could have talked about it. But I don't think they would have lost all those games. So I guess it's kind of a moot point there. But I have never been in favor of how that was handled. And you're 4-13 since then. Chris Sanders joins us on the program now. So, Chris, 1 year to the day since John Robinson got fired. I mean, What do we make of the state of this team right now? They're terrible. They get beat every single possible way that you can get beat. And you got all this drama with the coach, and is he interested in going somewhere else, and the GM, and do they get along, and do they not? I mean, what do you make of all this?
Jared, you're right. There's just a lot of things going on. I mean, we don't know with the Rand Carthon thing and Coach Mike Vrabel. Then you got a defense that's inconsistent. They play good at home, and then they play good away from the ball. Then you have a secondary that's consistently giving up explosive plays. And also we have an offensive line that's struggling each and every week. And, last week gave up 6 sacks. And you got a quarterback that sometimes you're sure about and sometimes you're not sure about. And then we got some receivers with Burks, we don't know if he's going to play or not play. So right now they're in a situation where we got to clean this stuff up real quick. And I think that, I hope next year when they get a fresh start, then they can look at these situations that's going on and really clean those things up. Because right now, nobody knows what's going on. You're just looking at a bad football team right now.
As a player, when a coach gets fired, the way Ackerman got fired, and there's all the drama and the gossip and the talk, do you hear any of that?
I mean, you hear it, but it's kind of like you have on earmuffs because the one thing we do, and I know you may think this is kind of cliches, but when we're in the locker room, when we're on the field, and me and Derek kind of alluded to this last week, that we don't really think about it. We may hear about it on the news or hear about it when we're on our way into the facilities, but at the end of the day, we go out there and do our job, and what's going on upstairs, we kind of ignore it. Now, it may change if a head coach gets fired, say if Jeff Fisher was there to get fired, the alarm goes off. But if you have a position coach or a strength and conditioning coach or somebody get fired, it's not as a big of deal as opposed to it was a head coach or a general manager.
Chris, what do you make of the firing of Craig Ackerman?
I'm gonna give you a little bit of praise right now, and usually I won't do this, but I love what you said the other day. Even though he got fired, and I was staying fired him the whole week. I'm not celebrating that he's getting fired. I want to make sure I clear that up. And I want to say the same thing. I'll never celebrate somebody that gets fired. But sometimes, you have to make the change. I mean, if you look at the special teams, it was pretty bad in some places. But also, I don't just want to put the blame on the special teams coach. Sometimes the players will get you fired. And I sent you a text the other day. I said the first punt was on the coach, but the second one was on the player. So they all just got to be on the same page. So that's kind of how I kind of look at the whole situation.
Chris, do you think Mike Vrabel's on the hot seat?
It's a different kind of hot seat. I don't think it's a hot seat to where you're going to get fired. I think the seat is heating up of him just making better decisions on getting, left tackle, better decisions on in the draft, better decisions on getting the coaches that are really capable of really, turning this franchise around. I think it's a hot seat in that sense. I don't think it's a hot seat that he's going to get fired because, everybody loves him here, maybe not as much now, but he's still turning this franchise around, and they're still kind of banking on that.
Chris, do you think that the Titans have hope for the future after this year? Like, is Will Levis giving us enough hope? Is that all we – even if Levis – and I think Levis has a lot of talent. I do. And I think Levis's heart is in the right place. And I see him growing, and I like that. Right. But at the same time, I'm like, do I trust him to get him a line and for Vrabel to get the right line coach to coach the line and then get him receivers? And then, I'm nervous about that. And other than Levis, I'm not sure I have any hope with this team.
Yeah, don't forget about D-Hop. D-Hop gives you a little bit of hope. I mean, he's one of the guys that's making plays. But, they just got to figure it out. I think this is just me, and I'm gonna use my coach. I'm gonna put in my coaching brain right now. It's just go back to the foundation and the root of how you built a championship team. Look at 1999. Before that, we were 8-8. Before that, we were 7-9. So we had a nucleus of leaders that we believed in. The leaders that we have right now with Jeffrey Simmons and Autry and, a leader that you let go from to go to the Philadelphia Eagles. But the one leaders that you haven't, do you believe in them? Go back to the root. Go back to the foundation. Do you believe in Simmons? Do you believe in Archie? Do you believe in the guys that you have there? Like when I was there in 1999, we had leaders that we believed in. Eddie George was a leader. Bruce Matthews was a leader. Brad Hopkins was a leader. All those Blaine Bishop, Marcus Robinson, those are guys that we believe in. So it's going to come down to where's your foundation? Do you believe in the leaders that you have right now? And if you believe in the leaders that you have right now, then let's go build something great like we're capable of building.
Do you think the negativity of the season, if the Titans don't get this turned around, because there may be, it's going to be hard to win some of these games. Like, they're going to get crushed on Monday. Like, it's going to be hard do you think that Vrabel can overcome the negativity and make it through the season and make it into next season and get the culture right for next year?
I think he can, and the reason why I think he can, I know you hate when I say this, but this is his mojo. This is what he's built for. I go back to Ohio State when they said he couldn't do this, he do that, and he overcame that. Then he went in the pros. They said he's too slow, this and that. All of a sudden, he runs 3 or 4 Super Bowls and catches a touchdown in the Super Bowl. So the reason why I say there's hope that he can do this is because he's built for that. But what he's going to have to do is he's going to have to say, you know what, let's lay the foundation. This is where we're going. This person's in charge. This is what you're doing. Give everybody their roles and let them use their skill set. But if he's always trying to control everything and do it your way, as opposed to let everybody work with you, then that's when it's going to fail. So if he can do that, work together with others, and also lay the foundation, then I think there's hope that he can turn this whole thing around.
Do you think he's struggling with that right now, working with others?
I do, because I'm gonna talk about me, is because I don't care if I become the most successful receiver coach in America. I'm never gonna be above listening to somebody else. And I think sometimes, and I say this respectfully, and I love Mike Vrabel, but I think sometimes he struggles with listening to somebody else. If I want to be a great receiver, if I want to be a great receiver coach, and I want to be, a receiver coach in the NFL, I got to listen to folk. And I'm going to give you an illustration. I know we got to go, but I coach at Montgomery Bell Academy, and we got a head coach named Marty Everard. He's the head coach. He makes the decision, but there's some times where he says, I don't know. And he asks different coaches, what do you think we should do? Coach Moran, Coach Sanders, what play you think we should run? Because he involves everybody in. So one thing I want Mike Vrabel to do is just involve everybody in and quit acting like you know everything in the room and let everybody make you better while you make others better also.
Chris Sanders, he is the best, former Titans receiver. Chris, we will see you on Monday from Twin Peaks. And what I'm worried about Monday night, Chris.
I'm going to give you a hug when I see you. It's going to be all right.
There you go. Chris, we'll see you Monday here on the program.
Love you, bro. Bye-bye.
I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know about you guys, but this Dolphins team may hang like 500 points on the Titans on Monday, excuse me. Speaking of Monday, join me, Chris, and Derek live from Twin Peaks in Madison this Monday, 4 to 6 for the award-winning pregame show, where we'll break down the Titans and the Dolphins. And our award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and the Beast Unleashed. And, of course, Stillman & Company will start at 2 o'clock on Monday from Twin Peaks in Madison. Mike Vrabel did something today that, quite frankly, is beneath him. We will discuss next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. So I was listening to the Vrabel press conference today. I don't have any questions that are top of mind to ask, and honestly, quite frankly, he's going to lie anyways. So, I just kind of was just listening to the Vrabel press conference. I didn't want to miss anything. He was talking about the Dolphins and was talking about the team, and they've waived Monty Rice and, just kind of usual stuff. And then all of a sudden, Steve Lehman, out of nowhere. I got to give Steve credit because, I like Steve. I do. I think Steve's good at his job. I like talking to Steve on the radio. But Ian, I was not expecting this from Steve at the end of the press conference to basically ask Vrabel, how's the owner feel about all this crap?
Mike, how much do you talk to Amy during the season? Is there like a typical schedule for that? And what has her message to you and maybe the football team been during this time?
Well, always supportive. We don't have a set. There's not a set day. I try to keep her updated. Rand keeps her updated. And when we talk, it's, we're all, frustrated that we're in the position that we're in, and we're all working hard, extremely hard to figure a way out of it, and so that there's a level of support to what we're trying to do.
Okay. But now that opened the door to Amy questions, and then there was another question, and then he tried to kind of say, I'm worried about the players and focused on coaching them for the Dolphins and blah, 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 which then opened the door to Kaharski. And Kaharski said this morning that he was going to, that he was disappointed nobody asked the question if Amy directed him to fire Craig Aukerman on Monday. I kind of agree that I was a little surprised nobody did ask him that. But Paul was starting to head that direction, and Vrabel just took off.
Did you talk to her? Did she talk to you before the Aukerman decision?
We talk regularly.
Did you talk
Thanks, guys.
Before the Aukerman decision?
Just walked off. I don't want to talk about this. I'll just walk off. And I heard that. And I thought, what a freaking weenie. Seriously. Dude, you are a head coach of an NFL team. And quite frankly, you're the head coach of an NFL team that's not very good. You make millions of dollars. And you're up there because the league makes you, and you are being asked questions of the press. And again, it's not exactly like we're talking about national security here. We're talking about the special teams coach. Paul asks a perfectly good question, and quite frankly, everybody's kind of wondering it anyways, right? Buck wrote about it and speculated it. I've said that I think ownership went to him and was like, get him out of here. So he asked the question about, did you talk to Amy before you fired Craig Aukerman? He says, I talk to Amy all the time. Then again, if you listen to this, he's waiting for the next question. When he hears it's Paul, he walks off. Ian, can we play this cut again? He's waiting for the next question, hears it's Paul, walks off.
Did you talk to her? Did she talk to you before the Aukerman decision?
We talk regularly.
Did you talk
Thanks, guys.
Before the Aukerman decision?
I thought he was a tough guy. I thought he was, wasn't this think like a man, Mike Vrabel? That's thinking like a weenie. Oh, I don't want to answer this question. Can I ask a serious question? How hard would it have been for Vrabel to stand up there? And I get it. You don't like Paul. And I get it. Your team stinks and you don't like that. And I get it. I'm sure Vrabel probably thinks he's a victim and that it's not his fault that this team sucks so bad and that everybody's pointing the finger at him and everything. I get it. I understand all that. Is it not that hard to look at Paul and say, well, Amy owns the football team, and I'm lucky to work for her, but I'm the head coach, and I make the decisions about the coaching staff, and I made that decision, and we've moved on. Is it that hard to do? Is he allowed to do that? Why would you not do that? If you did that, would Amy get mad? If you took credit for firing Craig Aukerman, would Amy get mad at you, and that's why you didn't want to do it? Because if that's the case, then it sounds like you've got an Amy problem. But I don't think that would be an Amy problem. So why not just answer the freaking question? You're going to walk off like a crybaby? Thanks, guys. It's like, Mike, dude, if you're going to make it here, Like, if you're going to survive this, you can't act like a freaking weenie all the time. Like, it's time to act like an adult. It's time to act like somebody. I mean, this is the same guy who took the job and said culture doesn't matter when you're winning. Because everybody has a good culture when you win. Culture is about when you lose. He said that when he first took the job. And I actually thought that it was sound advice. Like, I really, there's two things Vrabel said that have stuck with me. That's the first. And the second is, if you're worried about the job that you don't have, you won't do the job that you do have. And I think that's a great, line too. But now you're losing and you're facing the tough questions from the press and you just walk off because you don't want to hear it? Be a bigger softy. Be a bigger freaking phony. That's embarrassing. That's beneath Vrabel. That is minor league stuff. Like, if you don't want to have an advantageous relationship with the press, if you don't want to be asked questions that you don't want to hear, go to Arkansas State. Because you can go to some Scarbini college where they've got 3 people covering the team, and it'll be great. You just shun off the one guy. You got the rivals guy. You've got the scout guy. You've got the 24/7 guy. And you've got the local beat guy. And if you don't like the local beat guy, you just turn him off. That's fine. You can do that at Nowhere Tech. Go do that. You'll make about, 5 times less. Nobody will ever watch your games. But other than that, you won't have to answer questions you don't want to. Or you can handle the big boy job like a big boy. And I thought that was so embarrassing for Vrabel. I'm like, dude, that is a minor league move. You are an NFL coach. And all he's doing is asking a question that everybody is talking about and wondering. We're all wondering because you consistently defended Craig Aukerman. More than anybody else, you defended Aukerman. When I asked you at the press conference, you defended Aukerman. When Paul asked you after the Ravens game, why was Phillips back there? Why? You said, no, that's my fault. Don't blame Craig Aukerman. I have to do a better job to transition over. When I ask you if you're going to fire any assistant coach, you say no. You say, I played the game. I know what this is supposed to look like. They're doing a great job. You lose the game on Sunday. You say, put it all on me. You fire the guy after all of that, and everybody around town is wondering, did the owner make you do that, or did you do it yourself? And you can't answer the question? Like, did you not think? I mean, he didn't get asked about it Monday. But did you not think that was a possibility you would get asked that on Monday? So wouldn't you already have an answer in your mind for what you're going to say? An answer that would make you look like you were accountable? An answer that would make it look like you're in charge? An answer that makes it look like you have control of a rocky situation? Nope. Piss Pants Vrabel walks right off the set. Does Sean McVay ever do that? Does Andy Reid ever do that? Serious question. Does Andy Reid ever do that? I don't know. I doubt it. So, I got to tell you, man, like, that's embarrassing. That's a bad moment. And that's a moment where I'm sure Vrabel walked away and thought he did the right thing. And that's what bothers me. Is that what he did was very clearly the wrong thing. Now, you're not going to get fired over acting like a crybaby during a press conference, just like I'm not going to get fired for, bad moments that I've had on the show or whatever. But it certainly is not the right sign at this point in time. At this point in time, a lot of people are questioning your ability. A lot of people are questioning your leadership. I asked Chris if he's on the hot seat. And Chris was like, kind of, I don't know. The amount that his job gets talked about, he is on the hot seat. Well, normally I would assume that the better way to respond to adversity is to face it head on, address it, and again, stay in control. Not, bye guys, walk off the set. Embarrassing. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on this, and then there's just one blunt Vrabel take. Like, this is an opinion that I have, and they can say whatever they want to say, but we'll get to that next. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tomorrow, it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexro tomorrow morning at 8:45. Preds Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
The sense I get from the Titans organization, and this is just talking to high-ranking sources there, just about how they feel. Let's just start there, about their head coach, right? Because they're not having a good year at all. They don't look good on either side of the ball. And Vrabel's done a really good job the last few seasons of putting together a pretty good product, considering the roster has never really been that great. But that being said, they know what they have. You know, sometimes with owners, you wonder if they understand that the talent that they have on the coaching side is that good if they're not winning. And that's really why I started to dig on that story, because he's a type of coach where you do talk to people around the league, they consider him to be a top 10, top 5 head coach in the league, despite the fact that he hasn't won a Super Bowl with the Titans just yet. Everyone that competes against him knows that they're going to be a really tough team to beat. So the sense I get out of Tennessee is they want to keep him there.
I mean, he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, Diana says.
Just yet.
But I think they're close. I think they're close, Ian. I think they've got a shot. 4-13 in their last 17. It gives me hope over the last calendar year. Good grief. So I'm just going to put it to you like this. I don't think Vrabel can make it the next 5 weeks. Now, I think he's going to finish the season, and then I think the Titans are going to trade him at the end of the year. I do not think Vrabel's coming back. And they could put every report out there that says, no. I talked to the owner herself who said that they've got a spare bedroom at the house for Mike Vrabel whenever he wants to stay there. He will be the coach next year, and I won't believe it. And I'll tell you why. Because Vrabel is going to have to accept something that I don't think he can accept, which is he's going to get kicked in the teeth for the next 5 weeks. You know, I used to talk about Derek Mason, who's now the MTSU coach. Congratulations to him. I used to talk about this with Derek Mason all the time, which is that I thought he was the perfect coach for Vanderbilt. Because he would win, 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, 3 games, 6 games, 2 games, 4 games. He would win, enough. He'd beat Tennessee every now and then, but he'd get kicked square in the face, and he'd smile about it every time. I don't think Derek Mason is the greatest coach who ever lived. I certainly don't think he is, 97 points worse than Georgia every week. But again, when you take that job, unless, the stars align for you, you're probably going to get kicked in the teeth every week. So in order to be a good Vandy football coach, you have to accept the fact that I'm going to make $4 million a year, $5 million a year, whatever it is the Vandy coach makes. I'm going to get to live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm not going to be the most popular guy in town ever because there's pro sports there, unlike all the other SEC coaches. And I'm never going to compete for a championship. I'm never going to be close to competing for a championship. And I'm going to play against all these teams that pay their players more money and have better facilities. But I, at least, will do it with a smile. And that was Derek Mason. Vrabel can't do that. I mean, I'm going to tell you, they might lose by 40 points on Monday night. And I am not exaggerating there. When I say they might lose by 100, that's an exaggeration. They may lose by 40 points. Miami, I believe, can name the score on them because the Titans can't cover Tyreek Hill, and they've got an offensive guru coach, and I don't know how the Titans are going to move the football at all, and they're on the road where they play terribly. I truly believe it is a name your score. Which receiver do you want to throw to for a touchdown game for Tua? Ian, do we even know what the spread is on the Monday night game?
I have not looked yet, but I will find out.
It's got to be 13. If it's not 13, then you people that sit there and tell me that Vegas thinks Alabama would beat, Vegas thinks they'd beat Florida State. Well, if they don't think that the Dolphins are 13-point favorites this week, then I'm not worried what Vegas has to say. And it's going to keep going like that, right? Every game they lose, it gets worse and worse. I mean, they put the Diana
You were right
story
on,
out.
13.
It's 13? It's got to be. I mean, there's no way it could be less. Lay the points, by the way. But it's every week it gets worse. And then there's a new story. And then there's a new rumor. And then Vrabel gets into it with somebody else. And then that's another story. And then it's something new every week. I promise you, he is counting down the days until the end of the season. Because I think he believes that he is smart enough to fix this at the end of the year, which is a confidence that I do not share. But, I mean, 5 weeks is a long time. And not only are they going to get kicked in the teeth, And not only does he not react well to that, they're going to get embarrassed on national TV on Monday night. They're going to get smoked by the Texans. And when it comes to the Texans, all that draft night stuff's coming back up. I promise you, C.J. Stroud will be asked about that. About the rumors and what did he hear and what did he think and what did he know. And then, I think the Titans are the ones who leaked that draft score, that S2 score on C.J. Stroud. And he said that he has an idea who it is. And so maybe he goes out there and tries to hang 50 on him. But when that happens, then it becomes, well, whose fault is that? And it's only going to get worse. And you still got to play Jacksonville again. And you got to play Seattle. Like, it's about to get ugly, folks. Like, it's bad. It's really bad now. This is the worst it's been since Ken Wisenhunt was the coach. And it's only going to get worse. And there are some guys that could handle this. And I never covered Jeff Fisher, but I was a fan when Jeff Fisher was the coach. And when it came to Jeff Fisher, I think he could handle this. I think he could, not make everything a pissing contest all the time. Vrabel can't do that. Like, Vrabel cannot lose with dignity. Because I think it's inside of him that he can't accept his own failure and admit to it. And 5 weeks is a long time. I talked to somebody the other day who I think is much more pro Vrabel than I am. And I was like, he's not going to make it, is he? And they said to me, 5 weeks is a long time, dude. And I was like, yeah. 615-737-1025. Texter says Titans should not be on Monday night. They're going to get destroyed. I was surprised they didn't flex out of this, but it is a doubleheader. And so maybe they're not allowed to flex out of it. And then the Packers and the Giants are the other game. By the way, are we getting the Joe Buck, Troy Aikman crew, or are they doing I'm sure they're doing the Packers game.
Yeah, they have the ABC. Titans and just
who do we
ESPN.
have?
I'm not sure about that.
Rob says, I think this could be another 59-0 embarrassment. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be that bad because that game, I mean, the Titans looked like they were skating out there, and Brady just threw it deep on every play, and Tua ain't Brady. And I do think it was personal. Floyd got the game ball for that, and I do wonder if I do wonder if Bill maybe ran it up for that reason. I don't think McDaniel's going to run it up, but I mean, it could be bad. Like, it could be really, really bad. And see, the other thing that I don't think Vrabel does is I kind of think Vrabel has to coach himself up about preparing for the worst, where it's like, hey, dude, you may get absolutely freaking smoked this week. But once you do, like, all week, you have to go through the meetings and you have to tell the team, like, we're going to shock everybody. We're going to play our style of football. It's going to be a close game. We're going to pull through. We're going to show everybody we know we can do it, blah, blah, blah. And then once they kick the ball off, like, just prepare for the longest 3 hours of your life. And then be prepared to get up there at the podium when everybody asks you questions, as your fans are yelling and screaming on social media. Like, be prepared for all these questions, knowing that, there's only so many softballs that can be thrown by the team people at one time. Like, get past that. Know that Paul's going to ask, TD's going to ask, Joe's going to ask, all these people are going to ask. And suck it up and answer them, and don't act like a baby. And get ready to get your teeth kicked in next week. And I don't think Vrabel can tell himself that.
Got Chris Fowler, Louis Riddick, and Dan Orlovsky on the call tonight or Monday night for.
I don't mind
ESPN.
Fowler, but I cannot stand Louis Riddick calling these games. Cannot stand him. Orlovsky, sometimes Orlovsky makes some really good points. Sometimes Orlovsky says things I think are off the freaking rocker, that I just can't handle. Fowler's fine. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. By the way, one texter says, smoked by the Texans and Oiler throwback uniforms. I'm sure that will go over well with ownership. I haven't thought about that. Woo! 615-737-1025. There is one other Vrabel thing I want to get to today that's more of a Vrabel Rand thing, and so we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The game, be sure to have I told people, Ian, about silly underdog picks? Okay. Be sure to play Silly Underdog Picks. That's right. Go online at the GameNashville.com or 1025 The Game's app to win weekly prizes. Silly Underdog Picks is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket.
Mike Vrabel singled you and Christian Fulton out in his postseason thing. But I'm wondering how that grabbed you. How did that catch you by surprise? Were you offended? What did you think about that?
I mean, I was, man. Because if you watch film, since my rookie year, to the end of this year, every play, I lay it out on the line. So, that was a surprise to me, and I feel like it kind of created a narrative a little bit as far as how I take care of my body. If you ask anybody, I'm a first one in, last guy out type of guy. And he knows that as well. So, It really just, put a little, what would I say? Like a bigger chip, like I know what type of player I am. And then, that wasn't discussed to me as well. So it was a lot, but I took it, with a grain of salt. And then, I'm not really, much a media person. I'm just going, why you single me out or whatever, I'm a roll with it, we going, and I'm going to just, get back to work,
Sounds like Vrabel pissed off David Long Jr., Ian.
Yeah, it didn't sound super happy about that.
Yeah, Vrabel says at the end of the year, he and Christian Fulton are repeat offenders, and David Long Jr. I don't think was very happy about that. David Long Jr. so far on the season played 12 games. So the injuries and everything else, not exactly that much of a problem for David Long Jr. in Miami. And let me say this, the inside backer position, I don't value very much. Like, I don't think that you need to use the 8th pick on an inside backer. Just like I don't think you need to use the 8th pick on a guard. But I do think that inside backer is important, and it is important to have a good one, and he was good. I mean, they tried everything, too. They tried Rashaan Evans, who was a bust, who was big and supposedly fast, but he was just too clunky out there. Then they had Jayon Brown, who was good kind of in pass coverage, but really wasn't great, kind of a liability against the run. They claimed Zach Cunningham, who I guess just didn't want to play hard when he was here. And then there was David Long Jr. And David Long Jr. was a great player. I remember David Long Jr., the 4th preseason game against the Bears, which is basically a minor league game where Logan Woodside quarterbacked the whole time and Khalif Raymond was the only other player I knew that was out there for the Titans. And David Long, it felt like in that preseason game, made every tackle because he was the best player on the field. Then when he got put in there in the playoffs because of an injury to Jayon Brown, he was fabulous in the lead up to the Kansas City game. Then when Evans got hurt in 21 and they stuck Long Jr. out there in the Kansas City game, he was superb. Never gave that spot back. In fact, I don't think it's an accident that David Long Jr. got hurt and the Titans fell off the cliff at the end of the season. But I understand. Guy's got hamstring issues. Again, Vrabel called him a repeat offender. And it's like, do you want to invest money in a guy who might be hurt? And if you invest money in injured guys, what's it mean? So they let David Long Jr. go to Miami. 2 years, $11 million for David Long. They replaced David Long with Azeez Al-Shaair for 1 year, $6 million. There's one massive problem with that, though. Azeez kind of stinks. Like, he really does. That, of all the reasons that they released Monty Rice, the only one that I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? Is simply because I don't think Jack Gibbons is very fast, and I don't think Azeez Al-Shaair is very good. And he's certainly, in my opinion, not good enough to play the David Long position. So it's got to be that if David Long is an injury problem, then David Long's going to go to Miami, and he's going to play great because he's a really good player, and then he's going to get hurt. Except that David Long isn't getting hurt in Miami. Just like AJ. We figured AJ would go to Philadelphia and AJ would have the same nagging injury issues that AJ had here. And then AJ didn't. Vrabel was asked about David Long Jr. today.
He was one of the guys you pointed out as a repeat offender with soft tissue injuries. And you see him there, he's healthy for pretty much all of the year. Do you ever look at that and just say, like, why is that?
No. I think, I'm not going to go back. You guys, answering questions about injuries, just pointing out that, when you list all the injuries, that some of those guys had, the same injury. They came back and had the same injury. I really enjoyed my time with David. I don't think that, loved coaching him. I'm excited to see him. I'm happy for him. Of course, I'm happy for him. He's persevered here, and he's gone down, and new opportunity, and they're, So again, we're gonna have to block him, and But I think when you, however it was phrased or said, it was the same injury. The guy was trying to come back and had the same injury, and couldn't play. So that was, I guess, the answer to my question. At the time, but we're going to have to block him if we want to gain some yards when we run the ball.
He said 12 times in there. TD basically asked the question, are you surprised David Long Jr. hasn't gotten hurt? And if so, does it make you think why you didn't re-sign David Long Jr.? And Vrabel says, no. And then 12 times. Why didn't they re-sign David Long Jr.? Remember, Vrabel was the one who got up there 2 years ago when was asked about the strength and conditioning staff and the trainers, and he was like, when I played, I never said the trainer sucks. Well, that's great, but when AJ goes to Philly and AJ never gets hurt, and David Long goes to Miami and David Long never gets hurt, and your players still get hurt all the time, at some point, don't you have to think past the, when I played, maybe just a little bit? Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Wheezy is in Bellevue and is up next here on the program and has been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Wheezy.
Hey, man, I was just about to say the same thing because I noticed David Long was a hamstring guy here. He was called the repeat offender with soft tissue. But then he's in Miami now and having not the same issues down there. Same for Fulton. He was doing fine until he was 13 weeks into doing this training program they have here. Roger Saffold never misses time anymore. A.J. Brown never misses time anymore. Is this all coincidence?
Do you think it's coincidence, Wheezy?
I don't.
I got to tell you, I don't either. Thank you for your call. David Long is the one to me that I was like, okay, this is going to be the test subject here. Because I'm not one to just jump up and down and say, oh, the strength and conditioning staff sucks, or oh, the trainers suck, or I'm not going to do it. Because I have no idea, right? Like, what the hell do I know about that? But David Long is the one, because David Long was a Vrabel player, right? Not that Vrabel ever got up and, kissed his tush, or anything like that. But just the way he carried himself, the way he played, the way he produced, the way he went about his business, like that is a Vrabel guy. Always reliable, always in the right spot, always making the right play, always putting his nose in there and tackling, never causing problems off the field, never getting stupid penalties. Like David Long was that guy. And David Long, we never heard him complain about his contract. You never heard him want a bunch of money. He just, like, that I gotta believe is like Vrabel's freaking wish for every player is that they be David Long Jr. And so they let David Long Jr. go. They signed Aziz, who has a lot of those qualities, except that he's just not that good. They signed Aziz. They put him in there. And David Long's not hurt in Miami. Mike, it might be the training staff. It might be the strength and conditioning staff. And not the assistant strength and conditioning guy, but it might be the actual strength and conditioning guy. And Vrabel, again, he's so defiant. He knows everything because he played the game. Vrabel is so, I never said that when I played. It's like, dude, it doesn't freaking matter when you played. Brady didn't like those trainers. That's why he went out with the snake oil doctor that freaking has him drink water to avoid concussions or whatever that crap was. He didn't trust him. Willie McGinnis didn't trust him. That's how they found that quack. So maybe we need to look in the mirror here just a little bit. Cedric is up next. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Cedric.
Hey, Jared, don't you think it's a classic meathead move to cut Monty Rice right before the Dolphins game? So we're going to have Jack Gibbons singled up on Raheem Mostert when we go into a blitz situation to try to stop those guys. So that's number one. Secondly, about the press conference today, him walking off, are we surprised? When TD asked him that question a couple of weeks ago, what did he say? TD, are you questioning my are you questioning
So
my
I actually have a response to that TD question where TD asked if he was losing the locker room, and he looked at TD and he said, are you questioning if I'm losing the locker room? And somebody said this to me, and I had heard nobody else say this, and I actually thought it was a good point. They said to me that they think that Vrabel said that to TD, that are you questioning my hold on the locker room? Not as a, TD, how dare you question that, but more so as a, Vrabel knows that the players talk to TD, just like when AJ talked to TD after he got traded. Vrabel knows the players talk to TD. So if he is losing the locker room and TD knows that he's losing the locker room, that's a massive red flag. So I understand Vrabel being like, hold on, TD. Are you saying that Are you telling me something I don't know here? I actually think that that's what happened there.
Yeah, okay. And then here's the last thing, man. Monty Rice leaves, and did you see his tweet? Thank God. So this is another guy that's left the program.
Yeah, I don't give a rat's ass what Monty Rice has to say.
But listen, man, he's a dude that actually played for this clown. And, I mean, okay, you care what AJ said. AJ told Kevin Byard, hey, now you're coming to play with a winner. You see what Monty Rice says. You see what David Long – you just said David Long sounds like he's pissed with Vrabel.
Oh,
this dude, man, is – I mean, my goodness, man. How many times are we going to man, listen, I hope we get 70 hung on us like they did the Broncos, and
no
maybe
doubt.
that'll force
Cedric,
maybe
thank you for
that'll
your
force
call.
Amy out of here. See you. Bye.
Yeah, here's what I'll say about, again, the Monty Rice stuff. I don't care what Monty Rice has to say, but I will say this. Robert Woods tweeted out when he got released about being free, and everything that I know about Robert Woods is that he's a pro's pro. So when it comes to Monty Rice, who cares what Monty Rice says? Robert Woods is different, though. And Robert Woods had a similar response. And I think part of it is that Patriot way thing where, Floyd used to tell me that, like, being in New England is miserable. Like, it's dark at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I used to live there. I lived there for one winter, and it was awful. Like, I was depressed. So it gets dark at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It snows every other day. I mean, it's just Foxborough has isolated itself. Like, there are stories about rookies that go there and get super depressed because there's nothing to do. And so Belichick's meetings are longer. They demand more of the players. They have higher expectations. And Floyd used to say, that's not fun. The fun is the winning. So when you're winning the Super Bowl or you're playing in the Super Bowl, it's like that's what this is what it makes it worth it. Well, when you suck as bad as the Titans suck right now, that's not fun. So I think that may be a part of it. But I'm not going to use Monty Rice as like the voice of reason here to say, stop what we're doing. Monty Rice has chimed in. 615-737-1025. The baseball winter meetings are going on in Nashville. And there's actually a lot of like baseball drama, like Ohtani and all that going on, but we don't care about that. But there was a report today about Nashville and an MLB team and everything else. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. if Major League Baseball is going to be within Davidson County, that it's going to have to pay for itself.
My overall look at this is any MLB opportunity in Nashville is very likely to have to come with a fully privately funded stadium proposal, whether or not that's on public land, whether that's some kind of land transaction that Metro may have some participation in. I know an original proposal to relocate the old PSC Metal site had some cleanup and relocation costs associated with it. I'm willing to entertain that scenario, but to your point earlier, we're not going to publicly fund an MLB stadium.
That was Nashville then mayoral candidate Freddie O'Connell, now Nashville mayor, talking about Major League Baseball, which is, look, it needs to be privately funded. If Major League Baseball is going to put a team here, it needs to be privately funded. Now, the winter meetings are being held out at Opryland, which honestly I was thinking about going, and then when push came to shove about like getting credentialed and then thinking about would I actually go out there, and I was like, pass. But it's cool that it's in our city. It comes here like once every 4 or 5 years. So it's here. And Ryan Porth sent this to me from Politico. Have we ever read a story from Politico on this show?
I think it was Axios one time, right?
Axios had the deal on the new stadium. But I don't think we've ever read from Politico.
I don't think so.
From Politico, Jerry Reinsdorf, the chair and majority owner of the Chicago White Sox, and also the a-hole that broke up the Chicago Bulls back in the day. Jerry Reinsdorf, the chair and majority owner of the White Sox, was spotted walking out of Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell's office on Tuesday. Reinsdorf is in the Music City for the Major League Baseball winter meetings where team owners meet to make trades and sign free agents. First of all, I don't think owners normally do go to the winter meetings. I could be wrong about that. They have owners meetings for that, but again, this is Politico, so let's not, slice hairs. While it's curious, there have been talks for months that Reinsdorf is looking to move the Sox from guaranteed rate field when the team's lease expires in 6 years. He refuted the idea, but Reinsdorf recently acknowledged if we have 6 years left, we've got to decide what the future is going to be. So Politico has the scoop that Jerry Reinsdorf was seen walking outside of Freddie O'Connell's office. And I said to Porth, because again, Porth is running the station in Chicago right now. I said to Porth, I go, let me put you like this. If Freddie O'Connell and Jerry Reinsdorf wanted to meet and have nobody know about it, they could do it easily. They could do it incredibly easily. I mean, I know Jerry Reinsdorf is famous, but Jerry Reinsdorf is not Taylor Swift. So if Jerry Reinsdorf wanted to meet with Freddie O'Connell, it'd be very simple. In fact, here's how you do it. My guess is when Jerry Reinsdorf travels, he doesn't stay in like a corner room with like 200 square feet, though he is a cheap ass and got rid of Michael Jordan. I mean, he probably stays in a nice plush suite, right? Hey, I'm in room 926. I'll meet you at 4 o'clock. Freddie walks into the room, they sit down, they negotiate. Nobody would know. So the only way that Politico knows this, in my opinion, is if somebody wanted them to know this. And I don't think Freddie O'Connell wants people to start speculating about an MLB team in Nashville. So let me just say this. I think you're the new Tampa for Jerry Reinsdorf. Jerry Reinsdorf in the, I want to say late 80s, maybe it was the early 90s, Jerry Reinsdorf wanted a new stadium at the south side of Chicago, and he wasn't getting it from the local politicians there. So they basically, if I remember this correctly, they basically forged a deal with Tampa in the state of Florida, and they were going to have a team. And that's why Tampa built that dome that they still play in today that everybody says is a crap hole, but I visited for the first time this year, and I actually like it. But that's why. And at the 11th hour, in fact, past, I think, technically the time that they were allowed to negotiate this, somehow, some way, the Illinois state something or another approved whatever it was that needed to be approved, and that's when they built the new Comiskey Park, which is now guaranteedrate.com stadium, whatever. And so now Jerry Reinsdorf wants a new stadium. And I think this came out, I want to say during the summer, Ian, we were talking about some scoop about the White Sox using Nashville as leverage for.
I think that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the first time we've talked about this.
No.
So every team east, and it was really east of Vegas, but I really think now every team east of the country, the center of the country, is going to use Nashville, and every team west is going to use Portland. They did used to use Vegas, but now Vegas is going to have the A's, so Portland will be the new threatening issue there. Oh, Seattle wants a new stadium. They tried to go to Portland. Like, that's what's going to happen. Everybody on the eastern side is going to threaten Nashville. Baltimore's already threatened Nashville. They got a new stadium. Now Chicago is threatening Nashville. Everybody's going to do it. Again, Gentry wrote a column on Saturday or Sunday about that phony baloney Dave Stewart group that always keeps talking about a team that was never – they never have the most important answer to all of this, which is what, Ian?
Who's paying for it?
Who's going to pay for it? If we get a baseball team in Davidson County, who is going to pay for it? And I can tell you right now, just based off of his history, I can tell you one person who is not going to pay for a stadium. Jerry Reinsdorf. If you were going to pay for a stadium, you would never leave Chicago. It's like somebody said, well, yeah, but how far down are the White Sox in terms of the Chicago pecking order where there's the Cubs and the Hawks and the Bulls and the Bears? I'm like, it doesn't matter. The local TV contract in Chicago is much higher than the local TV contract of what you would be able to get in Nashville. So, I mean, I got to tell you, I could be wrong about this, but I think the reason why Politico got the scoop that Jerry Reinsdorf was walking outside of Freddie O'Connell's office is because Jerry Reinsdorf wanted everybody to know that. I don't think Freddie O'Connell wants people to know that. I told, look, I'll say that. I told people from baseball straight up about maybe it was a year last summer. I don't know the exact timing of this, but I told somebody from Major League Baseball, I was like, hey, because Major League Baseball's told me, and I'm not going to tell you, whatever, but I shouldn't say they told me. That may be a stretch. It's been indicated to me that Major League Baseball would put a team here if they got a downtown stadium. And I told Major League Baseball, I said, look, you're not going to get $1 out of this Metro Council. Like, this was while the Titan Stadium was still being discussed and everything. I'm like, you're not going to get $1 out of this mayor, who is no longer mayor, but out of Mayor Cooper or this Metro Council. You're not going to get $1. And again, I don't know Freddie O'Connell very well. We had him on the show, and I am going to assume that you're not going to get $1 out of him either. So again, I think this is all a leverage thing. So make of that what you will. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Rand Carthon might have been given an unwinnable hand. We talked about this with John Hines last week, but Rand Carthon may have been given an unwinnable hand. I don't know. But it is absolutely wrong to do what I think a lot of you are doing, and we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. Ian, what happened 1 year ago today?
John Robinson got fired.
1 year ago today, John Robinson got fired, and since then, the Titans have had their massive draft strategy leaked all over ESPN. They had the general manager beg everybody to be positive after they took Will Levis and Tajay Spears. They got caught shopping Derrick Henry and lowballing Kevin Byard. They, ended up trading away Kevin Byard for a bag of footballs. They had a news leak about the quarterback and then kind of some internal squabbling there. And there's all this talk about what the GM does, what the coach does, how they get along, how they don't get along, how the coach wants to go to New England, how he's not. So it's just been a great year over here, which the Titans have won 4 football games. They've lost 13. Now, I have told you that if I owned this football team, I'd start over. I'd clean house, and that includes the coach, who none of you guys seem to feel that bad about, and the GM. At the end of the year, on Black Monday, we would announce, which I guess has become like Black Sunday now, because once the game is over, then it gets announced. But we would announce on that Monday that we thank Mike for his contributions to the team if we can't trade him. We thank Mike for his contributions to the team. We thank Rand. And a lot of people get mad about the Rand thing. They don't care so much about Mike, but they get mad about Rand. And I understand that. It may not be fair. In fact, it really isn't. And I do feel bad for Rand Carthon because I don't really know what he does. I know he's involved in personnel and scouting, but then whenever it comes to decisions that are made by the team, did Mike make that? Did Rand make that? And then it's actually, Chad Brinker's in the mix, and Anthony Robinson's in the mix, and the coaches are in the mix, and it's so does he pick the players or does he not pick the players? I'm sure Barry Trotz consults with his assistant general managers and his analytics department, but make no mistake who's making the decisions when it comes to the Nashville Predators. Barry. We can't say the same for Rand. But one thing that you guys are constantly doing is you talk about Rand so great this or Rand that, or it's John Robinson's fault this or it's John Robinson's fault that, and there may be some John Robinson problems in this. But the one thing you absolutely positively cannot do is you cannot even remotely compare this first year of Rand and Vrabel in terms of performance in the offseason to John Robinson's first year. There is no way that you can argue against that. And there's honestly no way that you can argue that John Robinson inherited a better situation. I actually have heard that from some of you. That this situation here was so bad that there's nothing Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel could have done. Nothing to keep them from this 4-win season that they currently have right now. And I think, wait a minute, what? I've heard people that have said John Robinson inherited a better situation. He inherited the worst team in the NFL 2 years in a row. They had the second pick in 2015 because they tied with Tampa. And Tampa, I guess, strength of schedule, I don't know, whatever. Tampa had the number 1 pick. And the next year, they had the number 1 pick. So you can't argue this team that ended last season on a controversial refs call away from the postseason was in a worse spot than this team, than the team that John Robinson inherited was. And then when it comes, and I know that a lot of people want to believe a narrative, so they want to say Robinson was the problem, Robinson was terrible, Robinson didn't do anything right. And that's just not true. When it comes to Carthon and Vrabel, I'm not going to say that there's a lot that I feel confident in what they did, but I've been hard on the Tajay Spears pick. And I'll say this on Sunday, Tajay Spears ran hard. He almost saved their bacon when Derrick Henry went out. But let's just compare them. In the first year, Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel took over a team that had won 7 games. This team's not going to win 7 games this year. But at best, this team is going to get to 7 games, maybe. John Robinson took over the worst team in the NFL and immediately went 9-7. And I hear all the bragging about Peter Skoronski and how, oh yeah, look at that pick, Skoronski, he's going to be a plug-and-play guard for the next 20 years. Well, we don't know that. But the one thing that we do know is Peter Skoronski is not going to make the Pro Bowl this year. Jack Conklin, John Robinson's first round draft choice, was an all-pro as a rookie. We talk about this free agent class, and you guys say, oh, well, who would have been out there? Who was any good? There's no way that we can blame them for, this bad free agent class that they brought in. Dillard and Brewer and Al-Shire and Murphy Bunting and Arden Key and Brunskill. And, Jared, you can't blame them for that. John Robinson's first free agent class, Ben Jones, Rashard Matthews, who had 945 yards and 9 touchdowns in his first year, both in that free agent class. Josh Klein was claimed off of waivers and started at right guard. You used the 11th pick on a guard. They claimed a Scarbini off the waivers, and he was the starter. So you guys can argue for Rand, and you guys can make excuses, and some of those excuses might be valid. Robinson blew the 2020 draft. He blew the 2021 draft, and Treylon Burks has been a just epic failure, whether it's injuries, performance, or both, and that was kind of the hallmark of the 22 class. So you can blame that on John, and that is his fault. But you can't say that they've had a better first offseason or a better first year than John Robinson did. John Robinson had a great first year. Again, I can't remember exactly who won Executive of the Year that year or what happened in the NFL that year, but John probably had a pretty strong case for it, for taking the worst team in the league and making them 9-7. What John Robinson did in his first year as general manager is what the Texans did this year for their team. They were terrible, and they went out and spent appropriately on free agents. They drafted guys who came in right away and contributed immediately. That first draft class, I have no idea how good this draft class is going to be. And again, whether or not it hits really depends on Levis. And there are so many factors that come into play on whether or not a quarterback makes it that are outside of the quarterback. But John Robinson's first draft class was an all-pro in round 1, an all-pro in round 2, and an all-pro in round 3. Sure, Kevin Dodd was a bust, but busts happen. All-pro, all-pro, all-pro. So the one thing that I will say when it comes to the Titans is, if Rand Carthon's going to make it, if you guys want to give Rand another chance, and again, I think you guys separate him. I don't. So to me, I hired Rand to work with Vrabel, or at least they did. They hired Rand to work with Vrabel. They did not hire Rand to run the team like the standard general manager would do. That's not what they hired Rand for. So if you move on from Vrabel and you give Rand Carthon that authority, you are promoting Rand Carthon. Why would you do that? So the alternative is to start over, which is exactly what I would do. And if you want to say that that's too harsh, I understand. But you can't use that first offseason. That first offseason for both of them, for whatever reason it was, has been a total failure. And the guy that you all wanted to get out of here a year ago, that you guys celebrated when the owner nuked your season by getting rid of him in the middle of the year with you in first place, he had much better results through year one than these guys have. I remember when the Titans played that year against the Chiefs, and it was really the end of the year where the Titans got hot. They hosted Denver, the defending Super Bowl champions, at home, and they beat them in an ugly run punt game. They beat them, and then they went on the road to Kansas City, and then they had Jacksonville and Houston to wrap it up, and if they won those three, the Kansas City and then the Jacksonville, it was going to be against Houston, for the division, all the marbles, and they ended up losing the Jacksonville game, and Mariota broke his ankle. But I remember the Kansas City game. Ryan Suckup hit like a 60-yarder or a 55-yarder or something like that in freezing cold temperatures. And this was like, this kick gets you into the playoff mix. And I remember when he was getting ready to kick, and Andy Reid called timeout, and he was short, and they showed Andy on the sidelines, and Andy had kind of a grin on his face like, I knew I shouldn't have called that timeout. There were like icicles coming off of Andy's mustache. And I was standing up in the back of the TV room that, my parents have, and me and my dad are watching the game. And I just said, oh, my God, I've missed this. Because the Titans have been bad for so long. And I'm like, I have missed these games that come right down to the wire, that have serious playoff implications. Field goal, you make it, yes, you miss it, damn. I'm like, we haven't had this in 8 years. And he's out there kicking for it. And that was because of what John Robinson did. Now, did Robinson fail in the 2020 draft? Yep. 2021? Absolutely. I said that at the time when they drafted Farley. You guys remember what happened when they drafted Radens? I went crazy. The Julio Jones trade was a disaster. The A.J. Brown trade was a disaster. But whether or not Robinson's the right guy, you cannot take what he did in year one and compare it at all to what these guys have done, because what these guys have done is 100 times worse. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phone. 615-737-1025. Plus, Rand Carthon said something in the article that TD did that was very smart on his part. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Do you have final say on the roster, Randy?
I don't think that matters because I think the word and what we truly believe here is collaborating. I think all that comes down to, in my opinion, is a matter of ego. Mike and I, we're here to work together, and we're going to bring the people in here that we see fit, and we're not going to see it.
That was when he was hired. Rand Carthon says, Paul says, Rand, do you have final say? Rand. And, of course, he was prepared for that. Says, I don't think that matters. I don't think it matters. Well, hold on. So is that a yes or is that a no? Most people would assume that probably means no, right? Do you have final say? Not important. I remember when John Robinson and Mike Mularkey were hired, John was asked if he had final say over the 53. And they were like, John, do you have final say over the 53? And Steve Underwood, who was the president at the time, was up there. And he goes, Steve? And Steve goes, John has final say on the 53. And it's like, okay, now we know. But, John didn't want to upset Rand's just like, I don't think it matters. Bull crap, he doesn't think it matters. Of course it matters who has final say. He told this one story when he got hired about the picking of Elijah Mitchell and how the analytic guy went to Rand and said, the analytics say this guy's the right pick. I need you to watch the tape because I can't walk in there with Kyle Shanahan and say, hey, here are the numbers, so can you watch the tape and tell me if the tape matches with the analytics? Rand watched the tape, said it matches with the analytics, then they went to Kyle. You know what the most important part about that was, Ian?
Kyle?
That they went to Kyle. Why? Because Kyle is thumbs up, thumbs down. Because Kyle picks. So, I think that's crazy. So right in there in that cut, he said, I don't think it's important, and, it's not about ego and everything else. And he said the same thing about ego in the TD article. And I'm like, what's great is, again, he is not putting his stamp on this team. He is leaving purposely there to be ambiguity on Andre Dillard and Sean Murphy-Bunting and all these guys they brought in as to, well, whose fault really is that? Was Rand in charge? Was Rand not in charge? Well, I don't think that's really important. Like crap, it's not important. Of course it is. And he said in the TD article, quote, I'm not an ego person, so I don't care about control, who has the final say. That creates dissension. Miss Amy trusts us to do our job. Again, he says he doesn't have final say. And I heard them talk about this morning on Robbie and Rex Road. Do you know what everybody assumes if he says he doesn't have final say, Ian?
If Carthon doesn't?
Yeah.
That Vrabel does?
Right, but he didn't say that. He didn't say Vrabel has final say. He just said he didn't. Or that it didn't matter at his press conference.
So are you alluding to Miss Amy?
I think that what they've decided is, hey, we're going to collaborate. And if the collaboration, ends in a deadlock, then we go to Amy. We try not to, but that's, the way it's been set out. And I think everybody probably agrees with that. That's fine. But what he's doing is he is setting everybody up to believe that Mike Vrabel's in control. But he's not lying either. It's pretty smart what he's doing. Basically, if we win, I get credit. If we lose, I didn't have final say. We're collaborating. I went out to go get players for Mike Vrabel. I went to the coaching staff and said, show me what kind of players you want. So then I went out and got those players. Don't blame me. I don't have final say. Brilliant. Brilliant on Rand Carthon's part. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Cam is up next on the Titans. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Cam?
Yeah, so, I just wanted to kind of call and give you your flowers because I was listening to the pregame show on Sundays, completely off subject. But the debate of, sign Derek, give Derek whatever he needs to feel comfortable to come back for one more season. The statistic is when Derek runs over 100 yards, the Titans rarely lose. Well, Spears ran good and Derek ran good, and you could see Derek on the sideline when they had showed him on the TV. He didn't want to come out of the game when he was cussing or he was, talking to whoever on the sidelines. But Spears couldn't finish the job, which is exactly what you were saying, leadership, morals, Derek, the way he does things. So I just wanted to call and give you your flowers for Sunday.
Yeah, I don't, and I appreciate the call, Cam. I don't think Tajay Spears had anything to do with why you didn't win on Sunday. In fact, I think Tajay Spears did almost everything he could have done for you to win on Sunday. So as much like I believe the Titans need to bring Derrick Henry back, and then they need to lower his workload and up Spears' workload next year. And, again, I think it needs to be like Jerome Bettis and Amos Zaraway or Willie Parker there at the end. Like, that's what I think this needs to be like. I think they need the leadership of Derrick Henry. Like, and not just like that Spears needs it or Levis needs it or the offense needs it. I think the whole team needs Derrick Henry's leadership. But that has nothing to do with why you lost on Sunday. I thought Spears did a great job on Sunday. He ran hard, which is a question that I have as to whether or not he can be a 3-down back who runs it hard when you need to run it hard, or, who's just going to be some scat back out of the backfield like Dexter McCluster. I don't want that. And he was much, much better than that yesterday. I was impressed with Spears. Now, I still probably wouldn't have drafted him in the 3rd round, but I was still impressed with him. Philip is up next on the program. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Philip?
Hey, what's up, Jared? Man, normally I agree on your takes, man, but I think John Robinson has a nice portion of this blame, man. A lot more than what you're giving him credit for. And you ride John Robinson hard. I know that he's like Floyd's man, but John Robinson, during his tenure of when he was here, he had some good draft picks, but most of those guys are not on the team. So how do you give him credit? They didn't make it through their second contract. Didn't make it to. If you look at all the good teams like the 49ers, the Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, they might have missed on a lot of draft picks, but when they hit on their draft picks, they still on the team and they doing well for the team.
Well, I think that the A.J. Brown trade was a disaster. And if they had fired John Robinson at the end of last year over the Caleb Farley, and thank you for your call, if they had fired John Robinson over the pick of Caleb Farley and the trade of A.J. Brown, then at the end of the season, we could have had that discussion. But the way they did it, when they did it, how they did it, that was, again, I think you ruined all of last season in order to do it. And I think the Titans did it when they did it because A.J. gave them the opportunity to fire Robinson and not have everybody say, what the hell are you doing? Because if they had won a 3rd division, how do you fire the general manager that's won 3 divisions in a row? Regardless of whether or not the guy's made some bad picks, how do you fire that guy? Ian, call me crazy. I don't think you can fire. I could be wrong. I don't think you can fire a GM who's won 3 divisions in a row.
It'd be hard to do.
Yeah, so what you do is you wait. That AJ moment gave them the opportunity to do it, so they did. And I get that. But what I don't like is I don't like this revisionist history that John Robinson was never any good, because that's not true. And again, you can argue whatever you want to argue. You can't argue that he didn't have 3 All-Pros in his first draft. You can't argue that he didn't draft Jeffrey Simmons and A.J. Brown back-to-back in the 19 draft. You can't argue that he didn't take the worst team in the NFL and make them 9-7. You can't argue that he won 61% of his games, which is on par with what Bill Walsh won in San Francisco. Anything else you want to argue, the Farley pick, I thought the Farley pick was so stupid. I could not believe that when they did that. I thought that was ridiculous given the report of the back injury. The AJ trade was a bad evaluation and a bad miscalculation. And quite frankly, and I never, I think John got arrogant. And I think that hurt him. Kind of like I think it's hurting Vrabel. But this idea that John Robinson was bad and these guys are good, you can't have it both ways. You can't say John Robinson was bad all the time, because he wasn't, and blame him for everything on this team because Andre Dillard is not his fault. Not re-signing David Long Jr. is not his fault. Treylon Burks is his fault, and that's a big one. Not drafting a receiver, drafting a guard with the 11th pick, that's not his fault. That's the commission's fault. And that's why I have no faith in the commission. Fitz will join us up next. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025. I'm going to give something away, but first let me tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller is giving away cash for the holidays. Their Cash for the Holidays promotion is back. They're giving away cash with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today at happyhiller.com. And this is something that I love about Hiller. They do this every year, and honestly, I enjoy saying it, like reading it. I'm not the one who's doing this. They're doing it, but I enjoy conveying this because it really is awesome. They want to make sure that every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year, so they're donating $50 in toys to Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase. And they're giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. That's right. How cool is that? That's awesome. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Oh, let me tell everybody, because I promised I'd be giving something away. Ian, good job on not letting me forget there. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you will see Bill Burr. So you can see before you can buy at Bridgestone Arena on Friday, May 17th. Tickets on sale Friday at 10 a.m. Good luck for that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, Mike Vrabel walked off today at his press conference. Ian, if you could, Mike Vrabel was asked today, again, Craig Aukerman, special teams coach, gets fired. That's kind of a big deal. And so Steve Lehman asked a question about Amy, and then Paul asked, if Amy was involved in the conversation with Aukerman, and this is what happened.
Did you talk to her? Did she talk to you before the Aukerman decision?
We talk regularly.
Did you talk
Thanks, guys.
before the Aukerman decision?
The walk-off from Vrabel. It's getting bad around here in a Monday night matchup against the Dolphins with your secondary is ahead of you. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program, Fox Sports Radio, Yahoo Sports. Fitz, it's bad around here. I cannot see it getting better on Monday night. How do you feel about the current situation of the Titans and where it's going from here?
So what's interesting about what you just played, and I'm going to be wildly transparent. I've not heard that, didn't know any of that. And as you play it, what stands out to me as I hear it is you've got, Paul doing what Paul does. Like he looks 10 layers deep into it. And you've got Vrabel doing what Vrabel does, where he feels like he should be able to dictate what's anybody's business and what's not anybody's business, which, by the way, works when you're winning. Like if you're winning games and you say, hey, it doesn't matter who talked to who, I don't really care to answer that. Nobody holds your feet to the fire. When things look as bad as they do right now, that's not good enough as an answer. This is one of those interesting moments where I think there's a core of people that are covering the team that have been around football long enough to, not be afraid to ask tough questions. And Vrabel's not used to having to answer them. I find this wildly interesting that he would walk off from a question that's fairly innocuous in the way it's presented, but also has deep meaning. I mean, PK is trying to drill down, as all of you are, on who's making what decision and who has what voice in there. And Vrabel obviously has no interest in answering those questions, but it doesn't really work that way. Like, it's y'all's job to ask those, and it's at some level his job to either sit there and take it or answer it.
So there's 5 more weeks in the season. Vrabel's already fired one of his favorite coaches after the debacle of special teams last week. We had the walk-off today. I mean, Fitz, I could see Miami scoring 50 points on Monday night, in all seriousness. I do not know if he can do 5 more weeks of this. Like, I do not know. Like, it's only going to get worse, which leads me to this question. There's going to be about 10 jobs that are open this year. A lot of teams are going to fire their coaches. We know Ben Johnson is a big candidate. We know Bobby Slowick is probably a big candidate. Maybe Press Taylor in Jacksonville's a candidate. But I don't see a lot of coaching candidates that are out there to take these jobs. Do you still think that Mike Vrabel, in spite of everything that's gone on over the last year, would have significant value on the trade market after the season if he and the Titans decide that there's not a future here between them?
Yes. And part of the reason, like the exact clip that you just played and everything you just showed or you just talked about, 90% of the people, fans that are paying attention, don't even know that happened, won't even know that it happened. The percentage of owners that will look at that and put any blame at Vrabel's feet is very, very small. Like, I don't think this is where, if Robert Saleh does the same thing with the Jets, people will be talking about it all day tomorrow. But as we've talked about a million times, and Titans fans hate me for being so honest about it, because the Titans organization doesn't get the same level of attention, when Vrabel is on the open market, the presumption is never going to be that Vrabel sucked. It's just going to be that the Titans suck. That's the way people, like, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the way people will internalize all that. They'll be like, well, they didn't have enough talent there. That's not on him. He needs to win. Like, I think what's interesting is this is what you always got to do in a divorce between a coach and a team. You got to ask yourself, how coveted will that job be and how coveted will that coach be? And you look at a lot of those instances. I think Vrabel is still very coveted. To be very blunt, I don't think the Titans' job is.
Do you think that Rand Carthon could work Bobby Slowick with the San Francisco connections? And if you were the owner of the Titans, would you be trying to work Rand Carthon for a San Francisco connection, or would you be trying to hold on to make it work with Vrabel and Carthon?
Look, I'd be trying to hold on and make it work only because, like, this is my biggest belief, and I've been taking this for the last 2 weeks to every smart person I can around football. Like, I think that the job of hiring a coach requires so much luck. I mean, flat out luck, because a year ago right now, the Texans looked like the worst job in the world, and the conversation was that no minority candidate specifically would ever take it. Now, D'Amico obviously had ties with the Texans organization, but that's why, all of a sudden you look at the way that is now. I went back and looked at previous year's hiring articles when I was still at ESPN, and ESPN.com every year was ranking the coaching hires from best to worst. The year that Doug Peterson was in the Super Bowl with the Eagles, he was ranked. The year he was hired that year, he had been ranked as the worst of all of the hires, and every single coach that had been ranked ahead of him had already been fired by the time he got to a Super Bowl. So I point this out because I think hiring the right coach is wild luck. So if I'm an owner, I'm going to hold on to the absolute end of the earth to try and make it work because I don't want to dip my way back in. Can Rand work his relationships to bring in a candidate? Heck yes. That is absolutely happens behind the scenes all the time where a GM hires people that they know that they're familiar with. That is common. I think that the way you put together the Lego blocks on that makes a ton of sense. But does that mean that he's going to be a good head coach? Like, the problem is being a head coach is such a different job than being a coordinator. There is no valid way to turn around and look and figure out if a first-time head coach is actually going to be any good. So you are basically rolling the dice and hoping that you got yourself a Shane Steichen and that you got yourself a great one, a D'Amico, and that you didn't get, somebody that stinks. And that's just easier said than done, man.
I'm not a huge Steichen guy. I mean, I know they won and whatever. I mean, I don't know. Not a huge Steichen guy. Jason Fitz is with us here on the program. So where do you think the Titans go from here? Like, do you think that if they get their teeth kicked in on Monday Night Football and they get embarrassed on national TV against the Dolphins, that they can and Vrabel can accept where they are and rise above at the end of the season? Like, can they just move on at the end of the year, or is there going to be too much damage over these last 5 weeks?
Yeah, so I think the way that this game goes down matters. Like, because you're right, the Dolphins, and much has been made about the Dolphins' inability to beat teams with a winning record. That is not this situation. The Dolphins can put 50 up on anybody, anytime, anywhere, and Tyreek is absolutely, and I've talked to people around him and around that organization, he is absolutely going to try and make a push to be in the wide receiver MVP conversation. He wants to get it done. He needs 500 and some odd yards to get that done. So I think, frankly, that means more and more and more of Tyreek over the course of the next few weeks. He's just wrong place, wrong time on that. I don't know that any coach right now on a terrible football team should be able to survive losing a game by 40 on national TV. Like that should be a breaking point, right? And I do believe you're right. I think this could turn into that, an absolute bloodbath by the Dolphins. It's such a bad matchup for the Titans and such a good matchup for Miami. This could get ugly. If it gets ugly, now I don't know what you do. Like, how do you justify keeping everybody in the room? But I think the best thing the Titans as an organization can do right now is just be honest about where they are. I think the Titans have to be honest about the fact that it is time to just call this what it is and start the rebuild. And now if you just come in and say, hey, we are starting an all-out rip-it-apart rebuild, now you got to look at the roster and say, who do we have that can be building blocks, foundational pieces for the future? And the most important thing they'll have to figure out is Will Levis that guy? And that's going to impact who comes in. If there is a new coach, that's going to impact the entire offseason strategy. Like, frankly, that's all that matters. For the next month, all that matters is figure out if Will Levis is better than the fourth best quarterback in next year's draft, because that's the real decision that's going to have to be made. And just because Will Levis was drafted in the second round last year won't mean anything if they're bringing in a new coach. Part of a new coach hiring process will be a conversation around, do you have the quarterback? Will I be able to select the quarterback? So I just think that, that's the only thing that you can look at if you're the Titans. You got to just accept, hey, we're rebuild. We suck, and we're going to suck for the rest of the year until we can find a way out of this.
Yeah, when you talk about rebuild, I do wonder what you mean by this, because I don't think rebuilding happens in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, I think that the Steelers can kind of rebuild because they're a stable franchise that understands we've moved off of Ben. And I think the Packers, with no owner, I think right now the Packers are going through a rebuild. But even as they're going through a rebuild, it's like, well, we're going to see if Jordan Love is the guy or not while we rebuild. When it comes to the rest of the teams in the NFL, I mean, Houston's not rebuilding. They were terrible last year. Detroit was terrible 2 years ago. They're not rebuilding. Indianapolis, I don't think it claims they're rebuilding. I don't think teams do rebuild. I think coaches get fired if you start talking about rebuilding in the NFL, Fitz.
I mean, Dan Campbell's first year was not what the Lions are now. I think if you say rebuild, that means new coaches are coming in. And when I say rebuild, like I talked to somebody that I trust pretty strongly around the Raiders at the beginning of the offseason. And they were pretty adamant at the time that internally the organization knew that they needed as many as 20 new starters. And knowing that you need as many as 20 new starters, you know that you cannot go into the free agency and the draft and get 20 new quality starters in 1 year. So now you're on a 2-year plan. You're asking yourself, can we get better? Can we maybe get lucky along the way? But can we get better? Whoever takes the Panthers job is going to rip apart the entire roster, figure out what they have at quarterback, and start what they hope is a 2-year process towards being competitive. Like, rebuilds are no longer 5-year plans, but there are definitely organizations that look within and say, okay, what are we going to do? Like the Patriots this year are going to have to figure out a rebuild. I think the Titans are a heck of a lot closer right now to being the Panthers than they are as a roster than they are to being a quality playoff team. So that means to me, like, start looking around and ask yourself, how many of the starting 22, and then look at your depth, how many of those guys do you really believe would be starting on a Super Bowl caliber roster, and then start eliminating them from the team and replacing them with young guys, draft picks? That's a process. It takes a long time. Even if you hit home runs in the draft, what, are you going to get 5 guys maybe? So if you hit home runs in the draft and then you hit home runs in free agency, you're only talking about a max of an infusion of 6 or 7 really, oh my God, guys. And that's if you have the greatest offseason in history. So if this organization needs an influx of 14, 20 people, that's going to take more than 1 year. That's what I mean by rebuild.
Yeah, I would argue that, like, the Titans, when John Robinson, his first year, that they went to 9-7, and the Texans this year are examples of just hitting the offseason out of the park. And the Titans finished outside of the playoffs. And right now, if the season were over today, the Texans would be outside of the playoffs. Jason Fitz is with us as always. Fitz, great stuff. Appreciate your time, bud.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yep, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio, joining us on the program. He says Vrabel still has value. Somebody texted into the text line, and they said, dude, Vrabel was just coach of the year, and he's got over a 500 record. He's got a couple more years. You know, the year before Matt Nagy got fired in Chicago, they went to the playoffs. Matt Nagy was once coach of the year, too. This is the NFL, babe. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. So I do have, before we get to Jared versus Joe, I have to pick apart something that Joe said because I need to know who he's talking about. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Twice daily, they are the best. Twice Daily's made-to-order offerings allow you to get it exactly the way you want it, when you want it. Customize sandwiches with your preferred meats, cheeses, and get bagels with all the fixings. And, of course, you can have snacks prepared for you the second you order. You make it yours, and they will make it fresh. Twice Daily has everything covered for made-to-order selections from breakfast, lunch, and everything in between. The Twice Daily team is ready to make you exactly what you want any time of the day. Also, be sure to download the Twice Daily app and join their loyalty program to unlock special discounts, savings, and so much more. And if you do join that loyalty program and the Titans score in the final 2 minutes of either half on Monday night, then you get a free half sub in the app on Tuesday. That's right. So the Titans have to do their part, but we shall see. That's Twice Daily, fresh all day.
what has happened here is that, Candace Lee, Vanderbilt athletic director, has been vocal. They've been able to raise hundreds of millions of dollars from their donors. They have, they don't have a huge alumni base, but they do have some very, very wealthy people in the alumni, as we know. And it's not just the Ingrams and Friss, right? You can't just lean on them for everything. Now, John Ingram went $500K to this Anchor Impact Collective from the start, but you got to have more than that. So Candace Lee has been vocal with people about the importance of, supporting the collective. It's like Danny White said, he's like, got to have it for facilities, got to have it for NIL, and hey, we're happy for all of it. But I mean, a lot of ADs are like, really, like, we have to have money in our collective. My understanding is that Vanderbilt now has money in their collective that is right there with the most SEC programs now.
Okay, wait a minute. Whoa. Vandy, Joe says this morning, Vandy, in all that rambling that he did right there, that Vandy has SEC level NIL money. Whoa. That's new. Ian, have you heard that before today?
Can't say I have. Nope.
Vandy has SEC. We're talking like Alabama, Georgia, soon to be Texas.
I think we've
Florida.
kind of somewhat assumed that Vandy has some alumni with money. I think we've always assumed that, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that just because you got alumni with money doesn't mean that they're going to give it to you to pay athletes for sports.
True, but I mean, the fact that there's some people at Vanderbilt that have money after they've graduated is not a surprise.
I mean, this is new to me. Now, look, I like Clark Lee. I think Clark's smart. I think he's a good man. I want him to do well. But you can't get kicked in the teeth the way he got kicked in the teeth last year and continue to keep your job, especially if they're going to give you NIL SEC money. So I'm just going to say this. Joe wrote in an earlier column that Clark Lee's not only going to get next year, but he's going to get the year after that, and I don't think that that's the case. I think Clark's going to get next year. And then after that, if it's the same song and dance that this year was, he's gone. And I would say that to Clark's face. I love him, but it is the reality, especially if he's getting this kind of NIL money. Now, you would say, and Joe wrote in his column that, well, he had a 5-year plan when he got hired, and they promised him a 5-year plan. Right. And then in the summer after he got hired, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that you had to pay, that you could pay the players with NIL. And once that happened, games changed. We got a quarterback at Louisville. We got a new guy who's going to be our quarterback next year. Guess how old this freaking guy is? 25 years old. He was the backup quarterback at Oregon behind Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert's been in the NFL for like 7 years, and he was the backup to Herbert at Oregon. So nowadays, 5-year plans? No, this is college football. We want a good team next year. And the only way that you can't get a good team next year is if you can't pay for one. Well, they're saying, Joe, that Vandy can pay for one. In fact, Joe said that there is a super secret sports family that is donating a bunch of money for Vandy and NIL.
They've got a crap ton of money now. And that happened, a lot of it, a big chunk of it happened over the weekend. Now, there's some information that is in the story, including about where one of the donations comes from, which is a very famous sports family, which I can't report. So maybe I shouldn't have said that right there, but I just did.
Okay. A very famous sports family that I can't report. What do we think?
He shouldn't have said that.
Any ideas?
Because now you're just going to be guessing for the next however long.
Oh, I think I heard this at like 7:45 this morning. I've been thinking about it ever since. Who do we think it is?
I mean, I would have no idea.
Can't be. It's probably not David Price, right?
I don't know anybody like
Rich.
Yeah, like sports family,
Well,
Vanderbilt.
doesn't it have to be? If it's sports family, it's got to be. But he didn't say sports star. So if it was a former Vandy sports star,
like, it almost makes me feel like it's not the Mannings, but it's something like that.
Right. It's got to be a family. It can't be one guy. So if it's Price, it doesn't count because it would just be Price. If it's Dansby Swanson, it wouldn't count. He's just Dansby Swanson.
Yeah, a couple of generations. Is there?
So
might have to go back to Grandpappy or something.
And it's not the Friss and the Ingrams because he said that John Ingram already donated $500,000 to kick this thing off. So who could it be? I have no idea. I'll say this. When all these ACC coaches complain about how the SEC and the Big Ten are going to pass them and how they can't compete because they don't have enough money, I keep wondering, well, if all this conference money mattered that much, wouldn't Vanderbilt and Rutgers be better than Clemson and Florida State? Because they're in the SEC and they get SEC money and Big Ten money, and those teams are in the ACC and they don't get as much money. And someone said, well, with NIL, this is going to be a huge factor. And so I said, all right, well, we'll see. If Vanderbilt passes Clemson, then you have convinced me that being in the ACC or the Big 12 is a death sentence. If not, then everybody just needs to stop talking about doomsday and the apocalypse and everything else. Well, if Vandy's got SEC-level NIL money, then, damn. Then we'll see if they're going to be better than Clemson. Matt said the Mannings. Why would the Mannings? Why would they do that?
No, it's not going to be the Mannings, but it's going to be something like that.
Joel says Brant Snedeker's family. No, it's not his family. It's him. It can't be a one where it's him, right? It's got to be a family. It's got to be like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Vladimir Guerrero Sr., right?
Sure.
Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. Ooh. Somebody says it could be the Wilfs. And I think they're part owners of the soccer team. I think they're, and I'm not talking like Philip Forsberg owners. I'm talking like real owners. I think they're part owners of the soccer team. So maybe the Ingrams, Tyler says, could it be the Haslams? Those are UT people. Why would
they're
UT
not going to give
people
them
be
Vanderbilt
donating to Vanderbilt's collective? So we'll keep that in mind. The other college thought I want to get to, Derek Mason, the former Vandy coach, got hired at MTSU. Good for him and good for them. I'm happy for Derek. I think that he'll do a fine job there. Do I think he's Nick Saban? No, but I think he'll enjoy. I think he'll do a decent job. I think, the community will get excited. I think he understands that job. They understand him. I think it's good for both sides, and I'm excited for them. Jared versus Joe. Scoops Joe joins us next for a Jared versus Joe debate. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Thanks to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical for sponsoring the studio. Here on a Wednesday, I'm all screwed up now. Wednesday at 5 o'clock, Caroline's here for Jared versus Joe. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. Joe is here. Joe will not admit that I was right about Craig Aukerman, even though Mike Vrabel, with his actions, admitted that I was right about Craig Aukerman, which we want to keep in mind. Plus, Joe, the best guess that I have on the text line as to who that sports family donator to Vanderbilt could be, is it the Wilf family?
Are you seriously asking me to answer that?
Sure.
I'm not answering that. Ian was right. I should have kept my mouth shut.
You could say no.
Oh, I'm not saying yes or no to anything.
Well, there's all kinds of guesses in here of who it could be. Somebody said it could be
Sure
John
are.
Arnold's family. Who is John Arnold? I don't even know who that is.
I have no idea.
All right, time for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline.
John Arnold is apparently a philanthropist, which is great. All right, first question. Joe, you go first. Mike Vrabel announces on Monday that Craig Aukerman has been relieved of his special teams duties. Was that the right decision to make?
I think it's fine. You guys, I've talked about this before. I think firing a coach in season is stupid. I mean, I said this before we talked about Aukerman, which I think was the day Jared beat me because of the Aukerman discussion. But I think firing a coach in season is stupid unless there's some huge personal issue or there's some conduct thing. I mean, I guess I could think back to last year after the plane from Green Bay. I mean, I guess that would have qualified as something that could have, I guess, necessitated that. I think it's dumb. If you got an issue coaching a certain area of your team and then you get rid of the person in charge and now you're stretched thin trying to do all the things, presumably, if that person did anything. But at 4-8, this season's toast anyway. Titans are still going to, try to win every game and all that stuff. But I think it's fine. And look, I said today that, Jared, you were right-ish. I will give you right-ish because ultimately you hammered on Aukerman for all those years, and he proved to be bad. But to me, he hasn't been bad until this year. And I know you can bring up some return they gave up in 2019. I mean, the two games this year, and I don't know that they lost the Ravens game because of it, but they certainly lost Sunday's game because of it. But both of those mistakes are directly tied to a special teams coach being incompetent. So, but that's different than, they have all these kickers and they keep missing kicks. It has nothing to do with special teams coach. We've gone through all this before. But ultimately, to answer your question, Caroline, yeah, I think it's fine.
So I don't know if you guys remember this, but about 6 years ago, Tennessee and A&M played a game. They were both undefeated. Tennessee was like number 9 in the country. A&M was like number 7 in the country. And it went to overtime, and Tennessee lost. But Tennessee fumbled the football like 5 times. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Butch Jones, after the game, was like, for us to be in the game, even though we fumbled the ball 5 times, really shows you how good we really are.
He's such a dweeb.
And it was like, okay, bozo. And so then we got all these calls and texts about how, it's not Butch's fault that they fumbled the ball. And the GM said a line that he took from Belichick that I think he regrets telling me, but I think it is absolutely apropos for this situation, which is you are coaching it or you are allowing it to happen. And when it came to Aukerman, people were saying, well, that second punt block wasn't his fault, and but he was allowing it to happen. When it comes to the Cam Batson play 5 years ago, in which Joe Buck said, man, Craig Aukerman, he's hearing it about his special teams. Last week against the Jets, they had a punt block. They missed an extra point. They gave up a kickoff return. I mean, it's just been terrible, and they just handed Jacksonville 2 points in the ball. I mean, he may not be causing it, but he's either coaching it or he's allowing it to happen. And this is not an isolated incident. The Titans haven't blocked a punt in over a decade. They're not. When's the last time, Joe, how long have you been covering the Titans for?
Well, is this the 7th or 8th year? Right in there, something like that.
Have they ever returned a punt for a touchdown?
I don't think so. I don't remember that.
I mean, I remember Adoree returned one that got called back against the Seahawks. What was that?
Right. Yeah, look, they've been middling with their special teams.
No, that's not middling. When you can't kick, you can't return, you can't cover punts. When you can't do any of that, you're not middling. You stink. This had been going on for 5 years,
You have to lean
Joe.
on actual data, Jared. I know that you're emotional about
What
that.
actual
And
data?
again,
Paul Kaharski saying Rick Gosselin does all these that I used to work with at ESPN, and he says they were 14th in special teams. Oh, okay. That guy says they're 14th. I watched the games, and when I saw some ranking today.
Good. So a guy who's covered the league since 1970, who is absolutely the most respected voice on special teams in the NFL since the 1970s, has rankings that every single team, not media person, team subscribes to because they are so in-depth and they are absolutely the definition of special teams rankings. If he says they're middling, that's a lot more to me than you say, they suck. They stink. I mean, there's a little bit of a difference between what Rick Gosselin does and your evaluation of special teams.
I saw a ranking today.
He bombed out
I
this
saw
year,
a nice
and that's
chart.
all there is to it.
I saw a nice chart today that had offensive line rankings. And on the offensive line rankings, it had the Titans like 19th. Now, I haven't watched every team in the league, but I guarantee you, I will put my life, I will put my house on the fact that the Titans do not have the 19th best offensive line in the NFL. There's
Did it
no
separate
way.
it by pass and run? Did it separate pass and run blocking, though? Because I bet you run blocking, they're about 16th, and pass blocking, they're about 31st.
Look, they're not 19th. I know that. And so, again, I've watched these games.
I don't know
this
what
has
that
been
means.
5 years of bad special teams. They never returned anything for touchdowns. I think the last return they had for a touchdown was the Darius Jennings in the first game of the Mike Vrabel era at Miami. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown. Since then, nothing. They never returned punts. They never blocked kicks. They never blocked punts. So, to me, Caroline asked if it was the right move. I mean, it wasn't the wrong move. But the right move would have been to do it after the end of last season, and he didn't do it. And
I know they'd be like, what would they be? They'd be like, at least 8-4, right? If not 10-2 right now.
Well, I think the Titans lost 3 games that can be directly contributed to special teams. The New Orleans game.
They did not lose the New Orleans game because of special teams. They
lost
lost
by 1 punt. They lost by 1
Ryan
punt.
Tannehill threw 3 interceptions.
That doesn't
Jared.
matter.
Yes, it does. Yes, it absolutely does matter.
No, here's why. Because because they allow, they're independent of each other. You still gave up points off of a punt that was blocked, and you lost by 1 point. So if Tannehill had ended up winning that game for them by hitting Chig down the sideline, which, again, we now know there's no guarantee Chig would have caught that ball. But if Tannehill had won that game for them, then that would have gotten special teams off the hook. But it doesn't forgive what special teams did by getting a punt block that led to New Orleans points, with which New Orleans beat you by 1 point.
Well, then you could also say that the refs lost the Titans the New Orleans game because of the Derek Carr fumble incomplete pass.
I absolutely
that Kevin
think the
Byard
refs lost the
picked up
Titans the
and
game
ran
for
into
that.
the touchdown. So you can't say that it was only special teams.
I didn't say it was only special teams.
Issues.
I said
Each
special
game.
teams cost them that game.
Each
the Ravens game. Special teams. Special
primary
teams.
culprit is what cost the
Titans
game.
lost the Ravens game by 8
points. Game one
points.
was Ryan Tannehill, not special teams. The primary culprit.
The primary culprit
was
of the
special
Ravens game was the offensive line.
There you go.
fair.
So it's one game.
No, that's not how this works. It's
yes,
not
it is.
just there's only one person responsible for you winning and losing every game. That's it.
When you say fill in the blank cost the team the game and you are wanting to pick one thing, you must pick the primary thing, or else don't say that sentence.
So then, you can argue that the Titans could have won. You could argue pass defense cost them the game on Sunday against Indy. I think special teams was the number one thing. But
Jared,
could argue
you can
that.
also go to the greatest special teams coach in the history of the NFL, and you can find punts being blocked and punts being returned on them, and most of their returns aren't good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So do you blame Ackerman for the Colts game in 2020 when they changed the punter in the middle of the week and he shanked one off the FedEx truck and then he got another one blocked for a touchdown? Or is that the punter's fault and not Ackerman's fault?
Yeah, I mean, is that not John Robinson's fault for the choice of punter?
I don't know. It can only be one person's fault, Joe.
Okay, then it's the punter's fault. You're a freaking professional athlete, and your job, the reason you're in the NFL, is that you punt footballs. I mean, what did Craig Ackerman, was he supposed to do like a Mr. Miyagi trick on his leg before he punted and he forgot to do it? No. Sunday, that's Ackerman's fault. Operational stuff, that's Ackerman's fault. Blocking scheme, that's Ackerman's fault. Individual performance, it's the player.
So what do you make about Blake Bedingfield writing at paulkaharski.com that Ryan Stonehouse is susceptible to blocks because he takes too long to punt the ball? Is that Stonehouse's fault or is that Ackerman's fault?
Well, now that is something that put more on Ackerman because that's something that you can actually coach, right? Like you can't make a guy, like when he's out on the field, he gets the ball, he's been practicing all week. I'm sure in practice he looked great. And if he shanks one, I don't blame the special teams coach. But if you have a consistent delay or whatever, then that is something you got to coach out of him. So I'll give you Ackerman on that one.
I just think there's too much that you can. I just feel like there's too much that you can say, oh, that's the player's fault, not the coach's fault, which is always the excuse for a coach. And I go back to you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. And for 5 years, the Titans and Craig Ackerman had been allowing it to happen. Maybe they weren't coaching it. I'm sure they weren't coaching Kyle Phillips to not be able to catch the ball. But either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Caroline.
Phillips thing, where it's their fault is, then you don't keep putting him out there. But that's also Vrabel.
Jared, you go first. If it was Amy Adams-Strunk's decision to fire Craig Ackerman, should we be concerned that Amy Adams-Strunk is getting too involved with team decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, it was the wrong decision to fire Ackerman, but if Mike was kicking and screaming and she said fire him, I don't like that because it goes back to this whole who's in charge of the Titans. And I understand that ultimately the team's going to always do whatever the owner wants to do. The owner owns the team. But for the most part, I think the most successful organizations operate by allowing the football people to make the football decisions. And while I think owners do play a role in deciding what they do or don't do, I think for the most part that the Al Davis, Jerry Jones approach does not necessarily work. I think probably the way the Seahawks are run works better, where Pete Carroll's in charge and he reports up to Paul Allen's sister, who I guess owns the team, and they have a team president and things like that. Like, that's how I think it should be run. And I think that, in the last year, the Titans fired John Robinson, and everything else from them has been an ambiguous clown show as to whose decision was that, why did they do this, whose call was that. And it's been one thing after another, right? Like they're shopping Derrick Henry. Well, who's the one shopping Derrick Henry? I don't know. Who leaked it to Diana Rossini about who they wanted to draft? I don't know. And I think the more mouths that they put involved in this, the more likely it is that there are, more issues with the collaboration. And everybody keeps saying Amy Adams-Strunk. And the one thing that I want to be very clear about is there are other people that own this team. Like, it's not just Amy. It's Amy, it's Kenneth, it's Barclay. So now we've got 8 different people that are involved, and I just don't think that's very conducive to winning.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, it's a problem. If she's dictating coaching moves in season, it's a problem. It certainly happens. I'm not naive to the fact that there's, billionaires who own football teams tend to meddle and tell their employees what to do. But to me, the good team, I talked about this, on the show today, or maybe it was yesterday, I don't know. But I think the best ownership in the NFL, and I think maybe in pro sports, American pro sports, would be the Rooney family. And that stat, which I had no idea when they fired Matt Canada, it was 1941, last time they had an in-season move. I think a lot of in-season moves to an owner at least saying, you going to do something about this? And I think that speaks to what a good owner should do, which is have confidence in the people that you pay a ton of money to and that you put a ton of responsibility on, and let them do their jobs. And then you reconvene and you have conversations and you stay involved in all that. But ultimately, if you start undermining them and making decisions for them, then I think that you are on your path to having a bad organization.
Do we think that the Mike Vrabel walk-off today when Kaharski started asking about Amy and the Ackerman deal, do we think that was a sign that Vrabel didn't want to do it?
Yes.
I mean, I tell you what, maybe, but but whether it is or not, Vrabel should understand that he made it look that way.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm Amy Adams Strunk watching that, I'm like, dude, did you really just do that? Like, you just basically, telegraphed that I did make you do it. And what if she didn't make him do it and he did that? That's why you stand in and answer the question.
I do wonder if Paul Kaharski had not been the one to ask the question, would he have responded like that?
You know what, though? Like, that doesn't matter.
No, I'm aware, but it makes me wonder.
That's a fair point.
But
a fair point.
That was a total minor league move from Mike Vrabel. Like, that was a minor league move.
It was a crybaby toddler tantrum is what it was.
Well, but here's where it's a minor league move, right? Like, let's say that the reason why Vrabel did that was because it was Kaharski. And let me say this. Nobody has to deal with more crap from Kaharski than I do. So I understand it. But, like, if you're in a big market, like if you're in New York, like you know that that's going on every sports center, every NFL network, everything that you want. If you're the Dallas Cowboys coach, you know that like most of America has no idea who the local people covering the Cowboys are, but that if, again, the coach gets crappy with the guy and walks off the way Vrabel did, it's going to be the number one story. So when you're in the pros, you're in the big leagues, you got to understand, like, hey, I may not like that guy. He may be a total a-hole. In this case, he is a total a-hole. But you got to suck it up and answer the question because that's why they pay you the money. And so when he did that, I was like, you freaking weenie. What a minor league move. Mr. Think Like a Man. I don't even know what that means, but Mr. Think Like a Man sitting here with a weenie doesn't want to answer the question, walks off the stage. Boy, that was exciting. More Jared versus Joe to continue next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline, go.
Medical or training staff was the problem. Joe, you go first.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So you just said does he prove that maybe they were the problem? I mean, that's the thing. There's no proving maybe, right?
Joe.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't.
I thought Joe had a very good first segment of Jared versus Joe. This is not off to a good start. It's like Dylan Radins. Makes a good block. All of a sudden, it's 2nd and 1, and now false start. Move it back.
Just need clarification from the judges. That's all.
My goodness.
Yeah,
a lot of chopping up of words. Could he have proven that the Titans medical or training staff was the problem? Is that good? Does that work?
I think I bring up a valid point, though, which is there's no way to know. Is it possible that the training staff is the problem? I mean, I guess, but I go back to, what I said last year, everything in this league is proprietary. I mean, it is absolutely cutthroat. It is, everything about trying to win, nutrition, training, obviously schematics, player acquisition, it's cutthroat as can be. Medically, that's not the case. Medically, they're all trying to help each other have the best possible product, and all these medical people on all these teams are friends, and they share information, and they go to the same symposiums, and that's my point. That's my biggest issue with the whole idea of a training staff being culpable where the guys have a bunch of injuries, because it's they're doing the same stuff. I'm confident that the medical side of these teams are very uniform. I'm sure there's this trainer with the Broncos is but for the most part, they are on the same team. Everything else about these teams is competitive, proprietary, et cetera. And that's my hesitation in buying into that. I get it. The circumstantial evidence says, God, there's got to be something going on here that's not working or that is causing this. And the only type of injuries that could even be discussed here are soft tissue. I mean, tearing an ACL or whatever, it doesn't. That is a thing that happens, and you can't. Training staff. It doesn't have it. Yeah,
football injuries.
But soft tissue, and that's the David Long thing. Soft tissue, Fulton. I mean, if you'll ask this again, and I'm not saying it's not a fair question to ask. You'll ask it again if Christian Fulton next year, wherever he is, goes through the whole year and doesn't have a problem in it. I mean, look, at this point, I think it's a fair thing to bring up. I can't buy that. I can't get there how logically that could be the case.
So I want to start with the first assumption you made, that every training staff is equally as good because they all share information, and that everyone's trying to have the best training staff, and we're all in this together. That may be true. I know this. I know that when Floyd Reese became the general manager of the Houston Oilers, he fired the trainers. He started from scratch and said, okay, we're getting a new training staff. And so I know that, again, he thought that there could be better out there or worse out there or whatever it may be. The second thing is Todd Torricelli, who's the director of sports medicine for the Titans, that he was with the Buccaneers for 17 seasons. Now, I don't know why he left the Buccaneers. Maybe they offered him more money with the Titans. Maybe he got fired there. I don't know. But there is a reason why he's not there. Frank Pirano's the special teams coach. That is a Vrabel buddy, right? He was the strength coach at Boston College, where his son played football. But that's not exactly why I think that David Long Jr. does prove that something is wrong in the Titans' body development or maintenance program. However you want to, strength and conditioning, training, whatever. The body maintenance and development program. And I'm going to tell you why. Because there have been two important players here over the last 2 years, two very, very good players who the Titans have been kind of nervous about when it came to paying more money to because of their injury histories. One, A.J. Brown. Two, David Long Jr. And in both cases, each guy has gone on to a new place in the NFL and not had anywhere near the problems that they had when they were here. And so when Vrabel goes through all those players that first year, and I just think that's just bad luck, right? 91 players, Derrick Henry breaks his foot, it's bad luck. Injuries, it happens. It is what it is. Then they kind of go through it again a second year. Then I'm starting to think, okay, this might be systemic here. Then the guys that they circle and say, you know what, let's maybe try to move off this guy because he might have some injuries, or if we're going to pay big money and, the injuries on AJ, that's a factor. I mean, I think part of the reason why they made the move on AJ was because they felt like they were getting a younger and healthier AJ, and this guy's been more hurt than AJ. But David Long was the one where I said, okay, if this guy who had the hamstring injuries and Vrabel called him out and called him a repeat offender, which he tried to walk back today, if this guy goes on to Miami and plays the same level of ball and doesn't get hurt, then something around here is the problem. And David Long has gone to Miami and has not gotten hurt. So I look at David Long and I say, this guy is the proof in the pudding. And I do think something is wrong, whether or not Vrabel wants to throw his head in the sand like he did with Ackerman or not.
I will say one thing about this that I think does demonstrate that something they did previously, I mean, they changed things. They changed things this year. It's pretty well documented. They did some different things in training camp, and it's been a way better injury year. So are they just luckier this year? They had 2 terrible years, but at the same time, they were talking after the 21 season about changing things. So I don't know. Look, again, I think it's all fair to bring up. I just haven't seen anyone explain like what that would be. Yes, I agree with you that you can have like great trainers and okay trainers. I mean, there's no any medical job, there are better doctors than others in whatever field. But I stand by like the information sharing, like the NFL is heavily invested in all these teams somehow keeping these players on the field in an incredibly brutal sport with half the freaking quarterbacks in the league on the shelf right now.
Only they're kind of invested, because if they were really invested, they'd get rid of all the turf stadiums.
Well, I suppose that's fair. Although there's the new turf that they have. The NFL claims the data supports safety with that, but players will certainly argue against that.
By the way, it should be noted that Todd Torricelli was voted the NFL's Outstanding Athletic Trainer of the Year award at the Combine last year. How? After the last 2 years, how? Maybe because he took care of so many injured guys? I don't know.
Well, that's it. That is it. That's exactly what it was cited when it happened, is that they've had all these injuries and he's had to deal with that. So that's, that's the thing. That's how they look at it.
So maybe he's sabotaging the Titans so he can collect more awards.
Maybe, but I don't think you get paid anymore for that. That's go. Like, hey, our business leads Amazon in returns. I don't think that's very good.
But they bought it.
Caroline, last one quickly.
Last one, Jared, you go first. Florida State 13-0 conference champions left out of the college football playoff. Did the committee get it right?
No. I mean, I think to me this is very simple. We have 5 conference champions out of the Power 5. We have 3 that are undefeated. We have 1 from the SEC and 1 from the Big 12. And in this case, the Big 12 team beat the SEC team. The SEC team should be out. And I think, and again, what I'm not doing is I'm not doing what everybody else is doing that believes that, Alabama would kill them. Because we don't know. We didn't see.
I thought Alabama would kill Auburn.
I mean, I thought that Georgia was going to beat Alabama. I thought Oregon was going to beat Washington. So, I mean, there's no way to know this stuff. I think Florida State's defense is not getting enough credit for how good they really were. I mean, Louisville, and I hate the quarterback there, but they averaged 33 points a game, and they really, really shut us down. So, I mean, that's a great defense. And we've seen great defenses with bad quarterbacks or backup quarterbacks. We've seen great defenses carry teams to championships before. Matt Mock won a national title at LSU, as I'm sure both of you are aware of. So this happens.
Yes, I know.
And so, again, I mean, I don't even know why we play the games anymore.
Good God. First of all, I love how you say quickly and then babble for 5 minutes. So Caroline knows Jared's take on this. Caroline knows my take on this. I know Caroline's take on this. So I will announce the winner right now. It's Jared, but that's fine. I will quickly defend.
Is it illegal to want you two to debate it? Isn't that what this is all about?
But if you know the answers for both of us, then you're whatever side you're on.
It's not about me. It's about the people. It's about the program.
Okay. All right. So listen.
I know a lot of your takes on a lot of things. I still ask the questions. That's my job.
So here's the thing. I'm with you both on. I think this would happen. This team would kill this team. That's not my reasoning. My reasoning is very simple. The games don't matter. Well, the games do matter. They absolutely do. And you know what else matters is when a team loses the most important part of it. And I don't care, Jared, if they have other guys who may go higher in the draft. He's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He drives the machine, and we have seen them play without him. It's not what I think would happen without him. We've seen them play without him. That data, to be ignored by the committee, especially when it's actually explicitly written that they cannot ignore it, would be an atrocity. They made the right selection. It sucks. I hate it for Florida State. Correct.
Caroline, who wins?
Joe wins this week. Because I cannot definitively say because of A.J. Brown and David Long Jr. that it's on the training or medical staff.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you.
I don't know that. How do we know that it's not maybe because of Vrabel?
Well, you
Because
know
of
what
the way
Vrabel's
that they
opinion is of why
practice
it's not the
every
medical
week.
staff.
Because he played in the league.
He played.
So
when he played, he didn't blame the trainer.
how could I possibly dispute that? He played.
In
Just
spite of
like
the
how he
fact
said
that-
that they just can't get back in drop back passing situations.
In spite of the fact that Willie McGinnis and Tom Brady hired this quack snake oil salesman because they didn't trust the medical staff there, but I guess that's a different story. Joe, congratulations.
Thank you. And
By the
thank
way,
you,
there's
Caroline.
some scuttlebutt in the text line that Mark Cuban's family might be the family donating to the Vandy NIL fund.
Do they have ties to Vandy?
Apparently his daughter goes to Vandy.
Oh, all right. Well, anchor down.
Joe, what do we think of that?
I have nothing to say, positive or negative.
Okay.
Ooh.
615-737-1025. All right. Joe said something that I didn't think about. Like, I'm going to be completely honest with you here. Joe said something that I definitely think might be a big deal that I didn't even think about. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Did you talk to her? Did she talk to you before the Ackerman decision?
We talk regularly.
Did you talk
Thanks, guys.
before the Ackerman decision?
Wait, just done with this. See ya. Vrabel walked off. So, again, I thought that was such a minor league move from Vrabel. If he was the coach of the Cowboys, and again, we all know Paul, so we know the relationship and the antagonistic, nature of Vrabel versus Paul. But if Vrabel were the coach of the Cowboys or a New York team or the Bears or Kansas City, like a popular team, people around the country would not know who that bald-headed guy is. They would just say that, look what Vrabel said to this reporter, and walked off. And I thought Joe brought up a great point in Jared versus Joe, which is why I'm not upset that I lost Jared versus Joe, because of what, again, I thought was a great point Joe made, which is if you're Amy Adams Strunk and you went to Vrabel and you said, hey, you ordered the hit on Craig Ackerman. And so Vrabel went there and he fired him. And even though Vrabel didn't want to do it, the owner says you got to fire the guy, so he does. I don't want you throwing me under the bus. And if she didn't do it, now he really did throw her under the bus. Because the point Joe made was by Vrabel acting like that, it makes it look like she did order the firing of Ackerman. So if she ordered the firing of Ackerman and she doesn't want the blame for it, then she could be upset at Vrabel for that, which is totally fair. If she didn't order it and now she's starting to get the blame for it because of how Vrabel acted, that could really piss the owner off. And I really didn't think about that. Somebody texted into the text line earlier and they said, Jared, I feel like you've become super anti-Vrabel. Every day it's the same. I just say you're out on Vrabel and move on. Let me say this. You lose every game. Every single little nook and cranny of this team has to be some kind of fight. Somebody else texted in and says, why don't you talk about the Predators and pick at every bone with them the way you do the Titans? And I'm like, we have. And then they got a general manager who tells you everything all the time, and now we don't have to figure out the second meaning in something. Like when Barry Trotz comes on the show and says that he wasn't happy with how Tyson Barrie handled his trade request and was upset about the fact that it got out. There's no secret meaning in that. Barry's telling you what's what. Makes sense to me. And sometimes I think the Titans could do that, and it might behoove them to do some of that, if I'm being completely honest. But again, I go back to the point Joe made about, I thought that was a terrific point. That if she didn't order the hit on Ackerman, and Vrabel did what he did today with the walk-off that makes it look like she did, oh, there'd be a conversation if I owned that team. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. We continue. 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, the Music City Bowl is set and ready to get kicked off on December 30th when Auburn at 6-6 meets Maryland at 7-5. Again, no longer the ACC a part of this. It's the SEC versus the Big Ten. Scott Ramsey is with us. He is the president and CEO of both the Bowl and of the Nashville Sports Council. So, Scott, let's start there. Can I ask this question of when Auburn has the season that they had, where they were 6-6, which is below Auburn standards, but they got a lot of excitement down the stretch with Hugh Freeze, including that game against Alabama that didn't go their way, but was probably much better than they thought it was going to be. Does that lead you to believe that we could have a big Auburn turnout at the Music City Bowl?
Yeah, it does, Jared. I think not only that, but, last year, anytime you have a coaching change and a first-year coach, and, you're right, one play away from really coming in here with a lot of momentum. But I think when we look at the bowl, every year is different. And, this year, certainly, I think it's a great opportunity for us to host Auburn. By the time you get to this point of the year, you kind of forget about what records are there and what destination you're going to. And Nashville's been a great fit for Auburn. A lot of alumni locally, a lot of opportunities for people to come for a few days, a lot of opportunities for people to come for day tripping since the game's on a Saturday at 1 o'clock. So I really expect a big Auburn crowd and really kind of a way to kind of build into next year.
Scott, do we anticipate Maryland to bring anybody for this game?
I'm anxious to see, Jared. I mean, sometimes when you get a team that's, we're where we are in Nashville here, and as you and I have talked, we have so many fan bases that could drive here in a reasonable amount of time. And when we get one on occasion that's typically a fly fan base, I'm anxious to see. I think they're excited. They really wanted to be here. They had an uptick in average attendance at home this year of over 20%. Obviously, Tolia and the quarterback breaking the Big Ten all-time passing record. Damon Evans, formerly at Georgia, so he knows Nashville, and they're really marketing, Nashville hard. So I'm anxious to see. It's a little early to tell right now. We're a couple days in, but I'm optimistic.
So I really want to get to the good stuff with you while I have you, because I think this bowl game is great. But with the future of both the stadium going up in a couple of years and the college football playoff transforming this upcoming season, while the Music City Bowl is still somewhat of a decent bowl given the fact that, again, it's got a good sponsor in TransPerfect, and it's going to be on ABC in the middle of the day during the holiday period, which is no small thing. And you get the SEC and the Big Ten, which are the two most valuable television properties in college football. I do wonder if both the convergence of an expanded playoff and the new stadium means that the profile of the Music City Bowl can get elevated in the upcoming years.
Well, I think the short answer, given we've got limited time today, is we're certainly going to do everything we can to do that. I think there's a couple things, though, that we can't control, Jared, that we're kind of in the on-deck circle here waiting to get an at-bat on. One, what are they going to bid out? We have 2 years remaining on our current agreements. Everybody does nationally. And I know, as you follow the national CFP thing, they're bidding out their media rights now that will begin in 2026, even though the 12-team playoff starts next year. So it's a very awkward kind of 2 years that we're about to go into after this year. More importantly for Nashville, that'll line up in 26, 27 with the new stadium coming online in 27 and hopefully open up opportunities for us to chase and bid and compete on the national level for either quarterfinals, semifinals, national championship games, certainly, but maybe first and second rounds. You never know how they're going to kind of alter the format. So we're ready to go, Jared, and we feel like we've got all the pieces in place now with an enclosed stadium that kind of gives us the weatherproofing we need for the game, but more importantly, a destination city that is really kind of in the starting blocks ready to go.
As far as the new stadium is concerned, how much do you think that will elevate the Bulls' profile? Not maybe from into the playoff or something like that, but again, from people coming here to see their teams in a Big Ten versus the SEC kind of bowl atmosphere?
Well, it's tough to tell. I mean, things are happening at such lightning speed right now, Jared. I will say this. I'd much rather be in Nashville than most any other city in the country right now when you look at however the postseason of college football is going to be reshaped. And let's be honest, I mean, the last couple of years, I mean, who could have seen some of the changes that we've seen in college sports in general, but football specifically. So I like where we are. I think we're going to be very positioned very well to be responsive to the changes in the format of the postseason, whether that's a traditional bowl game and a chance to bid on a championship game a la Super Bowl, or it's going to be a chance to compete for some other opportunities in the playoff system. So I'd like to answer that question right now because I wish I knew what we were chasing, but we're waiting to hear what's available from the commissioners.
Scott, can I put you on the hot seat for a second?
I expected it, Jared.
Did you see Politico today?
I did not.
Okay, so apparently
Yes.
there is a report that White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf was spotted outside of Freddie O'Connell's office today, the mayor of Nashville. The White Sox have hinted at using Nashville as leverage in the past for a Major League Baseball team. My theory on this is that got out because Jerry Reinsdorf wanted it to get out, that he went to go meet with the mayor. But what do we make of it, Scott?
Well, as you know, the baseball winter meetings are at Gaylord Opryland Hotel the last few days. So it was pretty convenient, I'm sure, for that meeting to happen. And, I think we saw that report a few months ago about the White Sox lease coming up in a few years. And certainly I think it goes, if nothing else, you got to be proud of Nashville for being on everybody's wish list. And certainly I think Major League Baseball down the road, certainly from my seat, would just be incredibly exciting. But I do think as you look at the landscape currently, owner, relocation, obviously that comes with a team, B, a stadium facility. Given the new Titans facility coming online, that's going to be another big project that would have to be, really checked off the checklist. But certainly exciting future. I think with a new stadium, a chance to have major, some of the largest scale events in the country and some in the world. When you talk about Super Bowl and now the talks of Major League Baseball, it just continues to be a great city for us to continue to thrive in.
Scott Ramsey, you're the best. That was a very great way of answering that question without a yay or a nay or a, hey, I think, I don't. You're the best. And that's why you run a fabulous bowl, the TransPerfect Music City Bowl, on December 30th on ABC. Scott, thank you so much. Auburn versus Maryland. We are really looking forward to it.
I appreciate it, Jared. You have a good evening, man. We'll talk to you later.
Yep. Scott Ramsey. He's the best, isn't he? I mean, I'm trying to get some juice there, and he knew it, and it was a great answer. That's going to do it for us. Smashville Live. Predators, big win last night in overtime against the Blackhawks. Cody Glass and Colton Sissons are with Max and Hal, and that's next out in Bellevue. We will see you all tomorrow from the arena at 2.